Chapter 102. In the abandoned courtyard, there were countless white bones hidden under the mud. Song Taotao did not dare to look and turned his face away. He was furious. After the last corpse was moved out, there was no other place to stand in the courtyard. Even though the Red Armor soldiers of Xiaoling County had seen many tragic scenes, they could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. This. Yuan Baozhen was also speechless. What does Imperial Censor Yuan want to say? Xiao Ju spoke slowly. Or is it that in your heart, this is still a misunderstanding? How can this be a misunderstanding? Without waiting for Yuan Baozhen to open his mouth, He Yan spoke first. This is Magistrate Sun's own residence. If someone were to bury female corpses here behind Magistrate Sun's back, it would be fine if it was 1 or 2 corpses, but if dozens or even hundreds of corpses were buried here, it wouldn't be hard to find out why an assassin would sneak in. The Sun family's front door is probably made of paper. Could it be that Magistrate Sun's family guards are all deaf and blind? Sun Xiangfu was sweating profusely. He didn't know how Xiao Ju knew about this underground court case. He gritted his teeth for a moment and argued, "These are just servants who committed crimes in this official's residence. After being beaten to death, they were buried here. This kind of thing often happens in large families." He Yan laughed coldly. "I also come from a big family. Big families do not have this kind of cruel behavior. If these are servants who committed crimes, I would like to ask Magistrate Sun to take out their contracts. I think it would also record the reason why they were killed. In addition, the corpses on the ground are all women. Magistrate Sun, these are all your servants? You are a 7th-ranked magistrate, and you have hundreds of servants in your residence. You can kill them as you wish. You are even more powerful than His Majesty." At the end of his words, his eyes and tone became fierce. It was difficult to resist. When he said this, Sun Xiangfu quickly knelt down and kowtowed, crying loudly, No, I am wronged. I am wronged." He kept repeating the same words over and over again, but he couldn't say why he was wrongly accused. The situation was already hopeless. He Yan's anger still hadn't subsided. He only felt that the person in front of him was really hateful. Last night, when she was fighting with Ding Yi had said that every Buddha statue in the room was a dead person. At that time, she had thought that Ding Yi was joking to scare her. Now it seemed that it was true. How ridiculous was that? Sun Ling and his son had done all kinds of evil in Liang Province. They had kidnapped countless women, and if they did not like them, or if they were just tired of looking at them, they would easily take their lives. To be buried in the Sun family's backyard was already considered good. At least there was still a whole corpse. Who knew if there would be even more pitiful ones who would be thrown into a mass grave after death, and even their corpses would be eaten clean by the wolf beasts, leaving no trace behind. How arrogant and inhumane was this? Song Taotao felt a chill in her heart. If she hadn't met He Yan that night, would she have been like these women, becoming a pile of yellow soil and rotting in this dark underground, never to be discovered by anyone? Her eyes reddened, and she said hatefully, "This is too despicable. We must avenge these women." As soon as she finished speaking, she felt someone poke her arm. She turned her head to look. He Yan was giving her a look, indicating for her to look at Yuan Baozhen. In an instant, Song Taotao understood what he meant. She turned to Yuan Baozhen and shouted, "Uncle Yuan, I've suffered so much this time. You're the only person I trust here. You have to make a decision for me." Song Taotao's father used to be Yuan Baozhen's superior. Yuan Baozhen boasted that he had a close relationship with the Song family. Naturally, he could not ignore Song Taotao's words. He wiped his sweat and smiled, "Of course. Commander-in-Chief, this corpse is a bit different," a red-clothed soldier said. He squatted down, picked up a handkerchief, and wiped the face of the person on the ground, revealing the face. In the room full of female corpses, this person was the only man. He had died not long ago, and his expression was terrified. Tisk, the person who spoke was Xiao Ju. He stood there and said slowly, "Looks like Imperial Censor Yuan's bodyguard has been found." The male corpse that was dug out was Ding Yi, whom Yuan Baozhen had been looking for since early in the morning. He Yan, after she killed Ding Yi last night, she was not in the mood to collect Ding Yi's body. She left immediately. However, Xiaoju discovered her identity and told Xiaoju that Dingyi was dead. This was done by Xiaoju. She dragged Dingyi out and buried him. Now that she dug out his body in front of Yuan Baozhen, He Yan felt a trace of sympathy for Yuan Baozhen. Yuan Baozhen's lips trembled, and he could not speak for a long time. The imperial censor's bodyguard was loyal and brave. He found many female corpses hidden in the backyard of the Sun family, and was killed by Magistrate Sunday. Xiaoju looked at him with a faint smile. Imperial censor Yuan, don't you feel pity for your bodyguard who died in vain? Nonsense. Sun Ling roared and stood up. He was pressed down by the soldiers beside him, but he did not give up. He struggled and shouted, I didn't kill him. This is slander. I don't know why he is here. I didn't kill him. He shouted until his voice was hoarse. In the silent courtyard, it was particularly ear-piercing. Xiaoju frowned and said indifferently, shut his mouth. The soldiers took rags and stuffed them into Sun Ling and Sun Xiangfu's mouths. This time, they could only make woo-woo sounds. Imperial censor Yuan. Xiaoju looked at him and smiled faintly. What do you plan to do? Yuan Baozhen's heart was filled with hatred. He also knew that Ding Yi could not have been killed by Sun Xiangfu's men. The person in front of him already knew everything, but he could not refute. He could only squeeze out a few words from between his teeth. Please advise me. Sun Xiangfu and his son had tyrannical power. They took bribes and robbed the people. They took advantage of the villagers. They kidnapped good girls and used them as bait. He said. As an Imperial censor Yuan has the responsibility of investigating the officials, and will not tolerate such vicious people. I have already informed the Xiaoling County Chief of this matter. Together with Imperial censor Yuan, we will report this matter to the Emperor. As for Imperial censor Yuan, he fixed his gaze on Yuan Baozhen and said with a hint of mockery, It is not my place to interfere whether it is a public report or a secret one. Yuan Baozhen almost couldn't breathe. He had clearly said, It is not my place to interfere, but he had already led this matter from beginning to end. Even if Yuan Baozhen wanted to do something, the Xiaoling County Chief had already reported it. He could not avoid it. Sun Xiangfu and his son's recommendation was Prime Minister Su's disciple. Prime Minister Su's disciples were all over Dewey. The case of the Liangzhou County Magistrate had embarrassed Prime Minister Su. In addition, to avoid suspicion, the new county magistrate would not be one of Prime Minister Su's men. Prime Minister Su had completely lost control of Liangzhou. How could he cause trouble for Xiaoju? When he returned to Shuajing, Prime Minister Su would not let him off easily. Yuan Baozhen only felt despair. Xiaoju turned to look at the servants shivering at the side and said, Tell me what you know and you will be spared. She wanted the servants of the Sun Manor to expose the crimes of Sun Xiangfu and his son. The servants were still hesitant. They were afraid that Sun Xiangfu and his son would seek revenge if they escaped. However, the servants were overjoyed and went up to agree. As a woman, there was no way out in the Sun family. Even if they were beautiful, talented, and gentle, the best they could be given as gifts to their superiors. Maybe they could live for a few more years. Most of them were killed by Sun Ling and his son after they got tired of playing with them. Living here was like living in jail. No one knew when the day of execution would come. Now that they suddenly had a chance to live, they could not wait for Sun Xiangfu and his son to die immediately. Therefore, everyone said that the crimes committed by Sun Ling and his son were chilling. They only felt that such a cruel and merciless person would lead to the wrath of the gods and the resentment of ghosts. Fei Nu and the head of the soldiers of Xiaoling County recorded that Sun Xiangfu and his son were forced to kneel on the ground. Xiaoju turned and walked out. Yuan Baozhen was still standing in the same place. With such a sudden change, he had no one to discuss it with. His thoughts were in a mess and he did not know what to do. Then he saw the person who made him grit his teeth calmly walk over with a calm expression. The moment they brushed past each other, Xiaoju suddenly stopped in his tracks. The young governor curled his lips and said in a low voice that only the two of them could hear. Imperial censor Yuan wants my life, but I want you to live. If you live, Su Jingfu will suffer more than if you die. He stood up straight and smiled mockingly. He said calmly, When you return to Shuajing, send my regards to Prime Minister Su. Imperial censor Yuan, have a safe trip. He turned and left. Behind him, someone exclaimed, Imperial Censor Yuan. What happened to Imperial Censor Yuan? Imperial Censor Yuan? Yuan Baozhen fainted. He Yin turned back to look. Xiao Ju's figure disappeared beyond the wall of flowers and could not be seen. This matter was settled. The county magistrate's manor was sealed by the soldiers of Xiaoling County. The originally imposing manor was now covered with seals, and the lanterns were in a mess. It was in a state of decline. Song Taotao saw many female corpses in the courtyard, and was very uncomfortable. He Yin comforted her for a long time and finally calmed her down. When Song Taotao felt sleepy and leaned on the table to rest, He Yin greeted Qi Wu, who was protecting Song Taotao, and went to find Xiao Ju. She still had some doubts. Xiao Ju was talking to Fei Nu's son Xiangfu, and his son had done countless evil things. The servants had exposed them one by one. There was no need to mention them one by one. Just based on what they had done, no one could protect them. The sins they had committed were enough to kill them more than 10 times. In the whole of Dawei, it was rare to see such a heinous act. For ordinary people, it was tantamount to a disaster when a cruel person had power. Wolves, tigers, and leopards were scary, but how could they be compared to the viciousness of the human heart? Uncle! He Yin stood at the door and shouted. Xiao Ju and Fei Nu's conversation came to an abrupt end. He Yin walked in. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. You still call me uncle? He Yin. Governor. She said it as if anyone was willing to call him uncle. It was obvious that he was the one who took advantage of her, but he was still unwilling. Why aren't you accompanying Miss Song? Why are you looking for me? He asked. He Yin hesitated for a moment and asked, Today you punished Sun Xiangfu and his son. Why did you leave Yuan Baozhen behind? You clearly know that Yuan Baozhen was the one who wanted to kill you. Sun Xiangfu and his son were abominable and deserved to die. However, the person who tried to assassinate Xiao Ju at the banquet was Town Commander Yuan Baozhen. Ding Yi was already dead, but Yuan Baozhen could still return to Shuajing alive. Would Xiao Ju be so kind? I didn't kill him here because he will die when he returns to Shuajing. Xiao Ju looked out of the window. It's just a matter of time. What about the others? He Yin asked. The Sun Xiangfu and his son in Liangzhou are able to do whatever they want. They must have accomplices. Those who supported Sun Xiangfu and those who supported Sun Xiangfu were still entrenched in Liangzhou. Why not kill them all? Xiao Ju, when the water is too clear, there will be no fish. Lady He, you are too naive. Fei Nu stood silently at the side, as if he did not hear the conversation between the two. The trees outside the window were lush and green. Who knew that such a beautiful house would be buried with so many sins? In reality, Xiao Ju's goal was never Yuan Baozhen. He already knew that the banquet at the Sun Mansion was a trap. He also knew that Yuan Baozhen's appearance would definitely be murderous. He did not come to Liangzhou City to participate in a game of cat and mouse. Instead, he came to control Liangzhou City in the palm of his hand. He led the new soldiers to guard Liangzhou City in order to temporarily avoid the sharp edge and avoid Su Jingfu's eyes and ears. However, Old Dog Su's disciples were all over Dawei. The practice of selling official positions and titles was prevalent throughout the country. Sun Xiangfu of the Liangzhou City Guards was one of them. Yuan Baozhen came under Su Jingfu's orders. If he could kill Xiao Ju, it would be best. If he could not kill Xiao Ju, he would secretly contact Sun Xiangfu. Sun Xiangfu would directly take orders from Shuajing. It was easy to trip up the Liangzhou City Guards. Even if a fly could not kill an elephant, it would be disgusting if it kept buzzing by one's ear. He Yin was blind on the night of the banquet. Xiao Ju disappeared for the next few days. Everyone thought that he had left the mansion. Ding Yi also followed him. In reality, Ding Yi was following Fei Nu in disguise. The real Xiao Ju had always been in the Sun Mansion. Sun Xiangfu had committed many evil deeds, and had dealings with many wealthy families in Liangzhou City. These wealthy families offered Sun Xiangfu gold and silver, and Sun Xiangfu guaranteed their peace in Liangzhou City. He also bribed his superiors and subordinates. He took care of everything. Everything he did and the gifts he gave were recorded in an account book. Xiao Ju found the account book and replaced it with a fake one. He also found something else here. Over the years, Sun Ling had killed countless girls. The original girls were all thrown into a mass grave. In the past 2 years, perhaps because he had done too many evil deeds, he had a guilty conscience and often had nightmares. The Sun family invited a Taoist priest to take a look. They said that they had to bury the girls who died in Sun Ling's hands in the northwest direction and suppress them with a Buddha statue charm. Thus, there was a mountain of corpses and a Buddha statue in the backyard. Xiaoju originally planned to use Song Taotao to punish the Sun family's father and son. With this discovery, even if Su Jingfu personally came to protect them, he would not be able to save them. In the past few days, he confirmed the people underground and searched for the account book. On the last day, he actually left the mansion. He did not do anything else outside the mansion. He picked a few people from the account book and copied the relevant records in the book one by one. He then sent them to the various manors. The business tycoons in Liangzhou City were all in his hands. In the future, when the new Liangzhou County Magistrate took office, no matter if he was Su Jingfu's man or not, he would not be able to do anything to him. From today onwards, Liangzhou City was his. Yuan Baozhen's biggest mistake was to miscalculate his direction. Xiaoju did not care about the assassination at the banquet. All he wanted was Liangzhou City. However, He Yan's appearance and strangeness attracted all of Yuan Baozhen's attention. In a way, He Yan also became the bait. It was just that this bait had a hook, and the prey that followed the scent to bite it. That was why things went so smoothly. While he was silent, He Yan was also thinking. Xiaoju had already expected today's events. She asked, "Did you let Yuan Baozhen go because Yuan Baozhen messed up his job and would be betrayed and punished by his master?" "That master is Prime Minister Su." She paused and asked, "Is Prime Minister Su the current Prime Minister Su Jingfu?" When she said this, even Fei Nu could not help but look at He Yan in surprise. She actually said it so directly. What she meant was that she did not know Su Jingfu. But who knew if she was lying? "Lady, he is so attached to the imperial court. Does your father know?" Xiaoju said calmly. He Yan knew from his answer that the Prime Minister Yuan Baozhen mentioned was indeed Su Jingfu. "Although my father is only a military officer at the city gates, and Prime Minister Su is the current Prime Minister. It seems like the difference between heaven and earth, but a military governor should know better than to bully a poor youth. I am 16 this year, and I have defeated all of the Liangzhou guards. I am unrivaled." She boasted shamelessly. "In the future, I might achieve great things and become an official with a higher rank than a military governor. So what if he is Prime Minister Su? I also have a younger brother who is younger than me. To say something disgraceful, we are like the rising sun, and Prime Minister Su is already in his twilight years. When my brother and I reach the age of a military governor, who knows if Prime Minister Su will still exist in this world?" Fei Nu choked on his own words and coughed. Based on He Yan's words, there was an 80 to 90% chance that he was not one of Su Jingfu's people. How could Su Jingfu tolerate such a disgraceful thing being under his command? He Yan was afraid that it was all due to luck that he was able to survive until now. Xiaoju heard this and sneered. "You don't know the difference between life and death. Maybe you won't live as long as Su Jingfu." He Yan thought that Xiaoju had guessed wrong. She had already lived one more life than Su Jingfu. Who cared about how long she lived? "Military governor, you don't have to be so guarded against me." He Yan looked at him. "We have a common enemy." "I don't know," he said calmly. "Why would Su Jingfu bother to have a dispute with a military officer at the city gates?" Naturally, a military officer at the city gates is not related to Prime Minister Su. However, if a dog bites someone, the master should also be held accountable. He Yan sighed. "My enemy is Prime Minister Su's subordinate. In fact, I am Prime Minister Su's subordinate." She smiled. "You and I share a common enemy. We should be friends. You have doubted me time and time again. It makes me very sad." Xiaoju glanced at her. She did not look sad at all. "Then you will be disappointed," he said. "I don't make friends, and I don't make friends with liars." He Yan. Was this person invulnerable to swords and spears? He really wanted to fight with him to vent his anger. Then military governor, He Yan held back his anger and asked, "What about the corpses in the courtyard of the Sun residence?" Those corpses had been there for a long time. Their faces could no longer be recognized, and only the bones were left. Some of them could still be recognized. It was not a good idea to leave all of them in the Sun residence. Xiaoju looked at the trees outside the window. The shadows of the trees swayed slightly. After a while he said to Fei Nu, "Inform the people in the city to come and identify the corpses." When the people of Liangzhou City heard that the military governor of the Right Army had brought people to seal the gates of the Sun residence and detain the father and son of the Sun family, they all clapped their hands and cheered. Those who were more courageous ran to the Sun family's door and spat on the ground, cursing loudly. Those who were less courageous stood not far away and waited for the soldiers to pass by. They then pulled one of them and asked carefully, "Sir, Magistrate Sun was really arrested?" After so many years of darkness in Liangzhou City, it was finally dawn. It was a good thing that the father and son of the Sun family had pleaded guilty. The cries of the magistrate's residents shook the sky. Those who had lost their daughters or knew that their daughters had been kidnapped, but could not do anything about it, came to identify the corpses. The corpses of the women were laid out in the courtyard. They filled the front and back courtyards. Although it was autumn, there was still a strange smell. He Yan followed Fei Nu and saw a mother-in-law being supported by her daughter-in-law looking for her daughter, who had been missing for 3 years among the corpses. There was also a young man dressed like a scholar holding his wife who had been kidnapped on the night of their wedding and crying loudly. He Yan saw a dark-skinned man in a white robe holding a female corpse and sobbing. "Sister, sister. Brother is here. Brother will take you home." His voice was so sad that it made anyone who heard it cry. The little girl in his arms was small. She was at most 12 or 13 years old, and was still a child. If the naughty ones in the family were at this age, they would still like to catch crickets and fight crickets. Now her small body was curled up into a ball. It was hard to see her lively figure from the past. Before a flower bloomed, it had withered. The whole courtyard was filled with cries and goodbyes. He Yan looked up at the sky and felt that the cries were about to break through the sky. This was the most tragic thing in the world. Fei Nu looked at her with some surprise. Girls were soft-hearted and could not bear to see such a scene. Song Taotao, for example, had already hidden in the house and could not bear to watch. Yan stood there. There was sadness in her eyes too, but she did not cry. Yan had seen too many goodbyes in life and death. Many men on the battlefield went out as the eldest son of the family, the husband of the wife, and became a pile of yellow dust when they came back. Living in the world, there was no lack of joys and sorrows. These girls were bullied when they were alive and imprisoned when they died. They lived a miserable life. Now they were finally free and returned to the embrace of their families. Their families would always remember them and shed tears for what they had gone through. What about her? Yan thought in a daze. Was there such a person who would cry for her death? Who would remember her when there was no one around and feel pain for her? Her family in her previous life sent her to the Yellow Springs with their own hands. Even after she died, she was still used. Was there ever a moment when she received the sincerity of her family? "Young master." Fei Nu's voice interrupted He Yan's thoughts. He turned his head and saw that Xiaoju had come out. He asked, "Have the families of all the corpses been found?" Fei Nu shook his head. "There are still 23 unclaimed corpses. Some of the girls who were kidnapped to the Sun family were like Song Taotao, who was not from Liangzhou. Once they were separated from their families, it was an eternal farewell. Let's bury them." He Yan was startled and looked up at Xiaoju. He stood tall and straight in the desolate courtyard, like the drinking autumn sword hanging at his waist, sharp, calm and reassuring. "Young master, where should we bury them?" Fei Nu asked. "Outside Liangzhou City, there's a peak called Chengfeng." Xiaoju looked into the distance, as if he saw something through the branches in the courtyard. His expression was calm and his tone was indifferent. However, there was a trace of imperceptible pity in his indifference. He said, "These girls had no choice when they were alive. They were like fish in a pond. Bury them here. May they be free in their next life and enjoy the wind." Chapter 103. As Xiaoju had said, the 23 unclaimed female corpses were buried on the wind-riding platform outside of Liangzhou City. Looking down from the wind-riding platform, the valley was covered by clouds and mist, like a fairyland. The coffins were made of the best quality, made with silver from the Sun family's treasury. The Sun family had amassed a lot of wealth over the years, and they had even renovated a treasury to store their treasures. Because the 23 corpses' names and origins were unknown, there were no words to be carved on the final tombstones. 23 wordless tombstones, 23 young girls laid to rest here. If they knew after death, they could sit here and watch the clouds move. If they were reborn, just as Xiao Ju had said, they could ride the wind freely and roam freely. He Yan and Song Taotao stood not far away. Qi Wu stood on the side, looking at the people who were burning paper money on the ground. Xiao Ju did not come when the girls were buried. Many of the people who were burning paper money were looking for the missing girls, but they could not find their loved ones in the end. After all, many of the girls who were killed by Sun Ling did not even have a complete corpse, and were eaten by wolves and dogs in the wild. A white-haired old woman was burning paper money in a metal basin. She was so old that she could barely walk. Her grandson had to carry her up the mountain path. Her granddaughter was kidnapped by Sun Ling 4 years ago and never appeared again. Even now, there was no trace of her granddaughter among the corpses in Sun Ling's courtyard. The old woman trembled and said, "I'm burning paper money for these girls. In the future, if a kind-hearted person sees Daniel, they will burn paper money for Daniel. Miss, rest in peace." Song Taotao used a handkerchief to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes and said, "Being a girl is too hard. If there is a next life, I don't want to be a girl. This has nothing to do with being a girl or not." He Yan looked at the paper money flying in the air. "As a girl, we don't live to suffer. It's the same for men. If they are unhappy with their fate, they can walk a different path. It's just that." She looked at the wordless tombstones. "For them there is no choice. This is too cruel." Song Taotao looked at her. "You are very different from normal men." "What?" If it were an ordinary man, he would probably say, "What's wrong with you women? All you need to do is sit in your room and dress nicely. When it's cold, there will be someone to put on your clothes. When you go in and out, there will be someone to serve you. There's no need for you to fight outside." She imitated the man's rough voice and said disdainfully, "Is it good to be a pet? Locking a bird in a cage and asking the bird to praise the cage for its beauty. I think they are the ones with problems in their brains." He Yan could not help but laugh. "You are also very different from ordinary women." "I'm different. By the way," Song Taotao looked at her, "I still don't know your name. You're not Qing Lisu. You're second young master Zhao's subordinate, right?" "My name is He Yan." He Yan said, "He as in firewood, Yan as in clear sea." "So it's big brother He," Song Taotao said. "You can call me Taotao." "This." He Yan scratched his head. Wasn't this a little too intimate? Although they were all women, if others didn't know and saw it, they would probably start to have wild and fanciful thoughts. "Then it's settled," Song Taotao said. "I've already agreed with second young master Xiao that I will temporarily go with you to the Liang province guard. When second young master Zhao's people arrive, he will send someone to send me back to Shuajing. Therefore, in the following days, I may have to stay with you." Song Taotao's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. "I haven't been to the guard station yet." She became happy again and chattered endlessly. "Miss Song." Qi Wu looked into the distance. "It's getting late. This subordinate will send you down the mountain first." "Let's go," He Yan also said. They walked down the mountain with their backs to them. At the steps of the wind-riding platform, there were clusters of white chrysanthemums growing in the grass. When the breeze blew, the chrysanthemums nodded slightly, as if a graceful young girl was thanking them. Not long after, they could no longer see them. After going down the mountain and returning to the inn they were staying at, Song Taotao dove into the room to take a bath. She had been busy today and had left quite a bit of ash on her body from burning paper money. She needed to wash it off. Since the Sun residence was sealed, she naturally couldn't go back. Thus, she went back to the inn she came from. The innkeeper knew Xiao Ju's true identity. Now that Sun Xiangfu and his son had become prisoners, he didn't dare to be negligent. The innkeeper was so attentive that he seemed to be a servant of some household. He surrounded He Yan and the others. He Yan said, "It's fine, I can do it myself." She took a handkerchief and went directly into the room. Fei Nu was packing things in the room. When he saw her, he was shocked. He Yan asked, "Brother Fei Nu, what are you doing?" Fei Nu said with a wooden face. I'm staying with Chi Wu. When they were in the Sun residence, the three of them stayed together. Xiao Ju was in the inner room while Fei Nu and He Yan were outside. Thus, they didn't feel that there was anything wrong. He Yan casually said, "It's so troublesome to move around." Fei Nu stood still and looked at her in disbelief. "You're a woman. How can you stay with me in the same room?" He Yan said, "You don't have to put on an expression like you can't bear to be humiliated." Fei Nu didn't say anything. He quickly packed his things as if she was a scourge. He couldn't avoid her and immediately left. He Yan was the only one left in the room. She was startled for a moment. Then she shook her head and smiled. In the eyes of Xiao Ju and her servant, her behavior was very unexpected. But in her previous life, she had been in the army for a long time. What was so difficult about living with a man? She was a girl and she didn't feel shy. She didn't know why Fei Nu was acting so awkward. He Yan walked to the bed and found that there was water and clean white cloth on the table. There was also hot water for bathing in the room. It must have been put there by Fei Nu. She still had injuries on her body. This person was like his master. Sometimes he was unreasonable, but sometimes he was quite considerate. There was no one in the room. She sat down and took off her clothes. She took a rough bath. She didn't have time to examine the wounds from yesterday. After she changed the old cloth, she found that the wounds were not shallow. Naturally, it was very painful, but she could endure it. He Yan leaned over and looked at the girl in the mirror. Her originally white skin had a knife wound. It certainly didn't look good. Lady He cherished her beauty. She wanted to pamper her with nectar. She had just arrived, but she was already unrecognizable. If the real Lady He came back and saw this scene, she would be so angry that she fainted. She was already very careful to protect herself, but once she decided to rely on herself to go out and lose the protection of her family, she was bound to get hurt. Humans grew from being hurt again and again, and scars would eventually become armor one day. A female general's body could never be as flawless as an ordinary girl's. The old wounds on her body were like a piece of paper that had been scratched by a strange knife. It couldn't be considered beautiful. It could even be called terrifying. Which girl didn't like to be beautiful? Even though He Yan had been a man for more than 10 years in his previous life, when he changed back into women's clothes and looked at the scars on his back and body, he still felt ashamed when facing Su Zhiheng. She never wore thin gauze clothes. Once, Su Zhiheng gave her a water lily-colored pomegranate gauze dress. There were pomegranate flowers embroidered on the shoulders and neck. It was as thin as a cicada's wing. She liked it very much. But she never wore it even once. It was because her shoulder was pierced by an enemy arrow on the battlefield. When she pulled the arrow out, it left a scar that could never be removed. She also remembered the look in Su Zhiheng's eyes when he looked at those scars. Although he didn't say anything, he deliberately avoided looking at her. It was more hurtful than directly saying that he didn't like it. He Yan stared at the bronze mirror in a daze. Why were scars a medal on a man, but a disgrace on a woman? How unfair was this? It was only natural for people to think that women used their beauty to serve others, so they had to maintain their beauty at all times. What a load of nonsense. He Yan lowered her head and carefully applied the ointment to the wound. Then, she wrapped the wound with a cloth. She did these things with ease. When it hurt, she didn't even frown. Soon the wound was healed. After doing all this, she rested in the room for a while. Then, she pushed the door open and went to Xiao Ju's room. The light in the room was on. Xiao Ju should be inside. Ian knocked on the door. "Commander-in-Chief?" "Come in." She pushed the door open and entered. Second young master Xiao was putting away the evening fragrance zither on the table. Ian almost forgot that he had come to Liangzhou City to repair the zither. Speaking of repairing the zither, Yan remembered that when she was drunk, she crushed his zither. "Commander-in-Chief." Yan braced himself and said, "Have you eaten?" Xiao Ju stopped what she was doing. "If you have something to say, say it. Are we going back to the Imperial Guard station tomorrow?" Yan asked. "How do you plan to deal with me?" Now that Xiao Ju knew that she was a girl, what if Xiao Ju really wanted to send her back to Shuajing? Now that she finally had some clues about He Rufei, she would rather die than go back. "How do you want me to deal with you?" Second young master Xiao sat down at the table and looked at her calmly. He Yan hurriedly moved a stool to sit beside him and analyzed the situation seriously. You have seen my abilities. This time, when you brought me to Liangzhou, I was the one who warned you about the assassin, and I was also the one who helped you distract Yuan Baozhen. In the end, I killed Ding Yi. If I think about it carefully, I have done more for you than big brother Fei Nu, who was sitting next to them, sneezed. A person like me, as a subordinate, as a confidant, I am good at understanding others. He Yan praised himself without any burden. With me, the Liangzhou Guard will be like a tiger that has grown wings. Commander-in-Chief, I think that if you put me in the 9 Flags Battalion, you will not regret it. Xiao Ju smiled and asked slowly, 9 Flags Battalion? I know that you are a straightforward person, and you must be suspicious of my purpose in joining the 9 Flags Battalion. I will be frank with you, because it takes too long to make a name for yourself. I heard that in the 9 Flags Battalion, even if you are handicapped in the future, you can still become an official. Our He family relies on me to bring honor to our ancestors, and I think that the 9 Flags Battalion is a good place to go. Her words were magnanimous. Xiao Ju picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip. She said calmly, You don't have to wait until the future. I think you are handicapped now. Yan. What? Could it be that Xiao Ju could tell that she was young Mistress Su and was blind in her previous life? Just as she was feeling nervous, she saw this person point at her own head. Yan. He was the one with a problem in his head. Why was she scolding him all of a sudden? However, he had no choice but to lower his head. Yan forced a smile. Commander-in-Chief, don't you think so? Xiao Ju stared at her and sneered. Liar, the 9 Flags Battalion does not accept incompetent people. Incompetent people? Xiao Ju could question her character, but she could not question her ability. Yan slammed the table. Who are you talking about? Someone like Ding Yi. You were injured when you fought with him. Xiao Ju's mouth twitched. Her beautiful eyes were full of ridicule. If you are not incompetent, then what are you? That was because Lady He's body was weak. Moreover, she had learned her lesson from her previous life. Of course, she had to be careful. If Brother Fei Nu was here, he would also be injured. You can use your deceitful mind to practice martial arts. Perhaps you will improve a lot. The more familiar this person was with her, the more he began to reveal the nasty side of him when he was young. Yan took a deep breath and suddenly smiled. All right, I don't care if you insist on saying that. I don't care if you are prejudiced against me. It's just that I suddenly missed the red mole on your waist. Xiao Ju's calm expression suddenly cracked. This rumor is originally a rumor, but as it spread, it became true. I was originally the daughter of a military officer at the city gate. My family is not prosperous and I am not famous. It is my good fortune to be able to have the same name as the governors. Yan stood up and said slowly, In the future, when others talk about me, they will say that I was once glorious and that I was the governor's beloved woman. Thinking about it, I feel that it is not a loss. It is just that it is difficult for the governor to be tied to someone like me. However, the governor does not care about what others say, so it should not matter to you. Xiao Ju stared at her. Her gaze was like a knife. She said in a low voice, What beloved woman? Yan replied with a smile. I am so outstanding that everyone in the Liangzhou Guards knows me. They have always admired me as a rare good man. When they suddenly found out that I am a woman, they would definitely not believe it. They would also wonder why a woman entered the military camp. I can only say that it is because the governor loves me deeply and cannot bear to be separated from me. That is why he hid me in the military camp and even brought me to Liangzhou Guards. If others heard this, they would only be envious of my good luck. Of course, they would also sigh at how deep the governor's love is. When Xiao Ju heard this, she did not get angry. Instead she laughed, shameless. Yan placed her hand on the table and quickly said, I am not an unreasonable person. I did not ask the governor to let me enter the 9 Flags camp through the back door. I only hope that the governor will give me a chance to prove myself. We will return to the guard station together and pretend that this did not happen. I also hope that the governor will put aside his prejudice against me and treat me as an ordinary soldier. Oh right, she seemed to have thought of something. I am currently injured and need to change my dressing at night. It is inconvenient for me to live with men. I will have to trouble the governor to find a room for me alone, the kind where I can bathe in. Xiao Ju said coldly. Don't even think about it. Then I can only be the governor's beloved woman. He Yan turned around indifferently. Even if you put me in a carriage and send me back to Shuo capital, I can immediately spread the news. Oh, I think this inn is not bad. As long as I scream. Xiao Ju facepalmed He Yan. He Yan smiled with a hidden dagger. Who told me to be a liar? Xiao Ju. I promise you. He Yan's face changed faster than the innkeeper's 3-year-old child. She patted her chest and said regretfully, I am a little disappointed that I can't be the governor's beloved woman. Xiao Ju's face turned ashen. Get out. He Yan happily whistled and left. The next morning, when Fei Nu and Qi Wu woke up and went out, they found that He Yan was even earlier than the two of them. It was probably because she was going to return to the Liang province guard station. She purposely tidied herself up and picked out a set of clothes that Chengli did not wear often. She was born with delicate features. If Fei Nu did not know that she was a woman, she would have praised her in her heart for being such an elegant young man. Qi Wu did not know He Yan's identity. She crossed her arms and looked at him from afar. She whispered to Fei Nu. You said that this person is invincible in the Liang province guard station? Look at his body, it doesn't seem like it. Fei Nu sighed. That was not the only thing that didn't seem like it. As they were talking, Song Taotao came up from downstairs with a handful of red dates in her hand. When she saw He Yan, she naturally reached out and smiled. Big brother He, these are the dates the innkeeper sent over. They are very sweet. Do you want to try them? Liang province was rich in red dates. They were all big and sweet and looked very pleasing to the eye. He Yan took them and said, Thank you. The young man and young woman stood there, pleasing to the eye and causing people to daydream. Qi Wu poked Fei Nu's arm and said mischievously, I feel that something is wrong. Could it be that second Miss Song has taken a fancy to He Yan? What about young Master Cheng? Fei Nu looked at him with a complicated expression. What are you worrying about? How can this be called worrying about nothing? Young Master Cheng is young Master's uncle. Of course, we have to help young Master Cheng. How about I teach that boy a lesson in private, and tell him to stay away from second Miss Song? Our young Master Cheng is pure and kind. How can he be He Yan's opponent? Look at him smiling at second Miss Song. TSK, TSK, TSK. I can't stand it anymore. Don't talk so much. Young Master hates people who gossip. Fei Nu said, You and I just need to do our job well. Qi Wu still wanted to say something, but the door opened and Xiao Ju came out. Commander-in-Chief. He Yan greeted her warmly. Xiao Ju acted as if she didn't see her. She passed by her, and didn't even give her a glance. She said to Fei Nu, Is the carriage ready? They are waiting downstairs. Fei Nu replied. Let's go. He went downstairs. Qi Wu and Fei Nu looked at each other. Qi Wu asked in a low voice, Did the surnamed He make our young master angry? Let's get to work. Fei Nu didn't answer and followed her downstairs. Second young master Xiao treats people coldly as usual. Song Taotao stood on He Yan's side, which made He Yan feel quite moved. The little girl said to her sympathetically, It must be very difficult for you to work under him. When I return to Shuajing, I will talk to my father, and see if I can get you an official position in the capital. With your skills and character, it shouldn't be difficult. Ha! He Yan didn't expect Song Taotao to have this plan. She waved her hand and said, That's not necessary. Thank you for your kindness, Miss Song. It's just that I am doing well in the Liangzhou Guard. Military Governor Xiao is not an unreasonable person. He is very good. It is my honor to work under him. Song Taotao only thought that she was speaking up for Xiao Ju and didn't think much of it. How is he worthy of you working under him? The people in Shuajing all say that he is cold and heartless. Although Xiao Ju's temper wasn't very good, He Yan couldn't go against his conscience and scold him. He only smiled and said, He isn't good. But didn't he find a way to make trouble for the Sun family's father and son who bullied you? If he really isn't good, Why would he care about the unclaimed female corpses in Sun Xiangfu's residence? Why would he bury them and invite monks to help them cross over? But Song Taotao still wanted to argue. The young man smiled and patted her head. He said warmly, "Miss Song, you are still young. You don't know that many things can't be seen on the surface. Many people also need to get along with them to understand their character. Those who are kind and considerate to you are not necessarily good people. Evil people that you think are cold and heartless may have a side that others don't know." Song Taotao was stunned. Before she could figure it out, Hien had already walked down the stairs. Her head seemed to still be warm from the young man's palm. She blushed and quickly chased after him. She muttered softly, "What do you mean by young? You are not much older than me." In the end, they didn't continue arguing. Hien lowered his head and smiled. The words that Xiao Ju said to those pitiful girls yesterday echoed in his ears. Outside Liangzhou City, there is a mountain peak called Chengfeng. These girls had no choice when they were alive. They are buried here. May they be free to ride the wind in their next lives. He could understand the despair of those girls, which was why he said such words. Therefore, she magnanimously forgave Xiao Ju's rudeness to her, and didn't take his bad behavior to heart. After all, there weren't many gentle people in this world. She went downstairs and saw Xiao Ju standing in front of the carriage. She walked over and asked, "Commander-in-Chief, will you ride with me?" Song Taotao was a little girl after all. When they came here, they all rode horses. When they came back, they couldn't let Song Taotao ride with them. Therefore, they ordered Fei Nu to arrange for 2 carriages. Xiao Ju tilted his head and looked at her. Hien explained, "I can't sit in the same carriage as Miss Song. We are a single man and a single woman. If others see us, Miss Song's reputation will be tarnished." Xiao Ju asked, So I should sit in the same carriage as Commander-in-Chief?" Hien said with a smile. He was about to get into the carriage when Xiao Ju grabbed him by the back of his collar and pulled him down. If Hien didn't grab his sleeve, he would have lost his balance. "You don't think of yourself as a woman, and you don't think of me as a man?" He raised his eyebrows. "Liar, I'm afraid you are too immersed in the act, so I'm reminding you. The mission is over. You don't have to think of yourself as Cheng Lisu." After he said this, he brushed off the sleeve that Hien had just grabbed. Qiwu passed by and happened to hear Xiao Ju's last sentence. He immediately grabbed Hien's clothes and pulled him to the side. That's right. You still think of yourself as young Master Cheng? How can you be so blind? Come here and ride with us." Hien was just joking. He didn't really want to ride with Xiao Ju. He quickly got on the horse. Fei Nu instructed the coachman, "There are girls in the carriage. Don't ride too fast." Hien was stunned and couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't that she was thinking too much. It was just that she was injured in the fight with Ding Yi. She couldn't ride too hard. Who knew if this was intentional? She was also a girl. Qiwu said, "What are you waiting for? Let's go." Chapter 104. Because they had to take care of Song Taotao, the carriage traveled slowly, taking more time than when they came. By the time they reached the Liangzhou garrison, it was already evening. Shen Han and his group were already waiting on the horse path outside the garrison. When the carriage stopped and Shen Han saw Xiao Ju alight, he let out a sigh of relief. On this trip to Liangzhou City, they did not receive any letters about what Xiao Ju was doing there. Over the past few days, they had been worried that the situation would change. Now it seemed that the matter had been resolved smoothly. Shen Han was about to speak when he heard Liang Ping say, Why is there a girl here?" "Girl?" A 15 or 16-year-old girl in a pink dress jumped down from the carriage in front. She was delicate and cute, with a face as beautiful as the moon. Looking at Hien, who was yawning weakly, Shen Han was shocked. The governor had gone to Liangzhou and brought back a girl. Was he trying to draw a line between himself and Hien? But doing this in front of Hien was too heartless. As he was thinking, he heard the happy voice of a young man behind him. "Uncle Big Brother, you're finally back." The one who jumped over like a rabbit was Cheng Lisu. Beside him was the beautiful female Dr. Shen Muxia, dressed in white. Cheng Lisu came over and said to Shen Han with dissatisfaction, "Shen Jiaodo, why didn't you tell me that Uncle was back? If I didn't hear it myself, I wouldn't have been able to welcome Uncle back." "Big Brother, I see that you've returned safely. This trip should have been very smooth. That guy Yuan Baozhen left, right? I knew you could do it, huh? His originally happy expression shattered when he saw Song Taotao. His tone instantly became ear-piercing. He jumped up and pointed at Song Taotao asking, "Second Miss Song, why is she here?" "What's with that expression?" Song Taotao frowned. "We met Miss Song in Liangzhou City." He Yan smiled and said, "It was also a coincidence. Miss Song will be staying at the city guards for a period of time." She did not go into detail about how she met Song Taotao and covered it up for Song Taotao. "Big brother." Cheng Lisu looked at him in disbelief. "I asked you to help me hide from Yuan Baozhen, so that he won't capture me and bring me back to get married. Yet you brought her to me directly? You're making me suffer." Cheng Lisu. Song Taotao couldn't take it anymore. She stood up with her hands on her hips and shouted back at him fiercely. "Do you think I want to see you? To be honest, I came to Liangzhou City because I was running away from my marriage. If I hadn't met second young Master Xiao, I wouldn't have come here. You don't want to marry me, but I don't like you. A useless young master wants to be a match for me. I think you're dreaming of marrying Shishir, wishful thinking." In terms of eloquence, Cheng Lisu was no match for Song Taotao. At this moment, she regretted that she didn't read more books. She didn't even know how to scold someone. "You shrew," Cheng Lisu said weakly. "At least I'm better than a useless person like you." Song Taotao rolled her eyes at him. The two of them started to quarrel. Liang Ping had no choice but to mediate. "Young Master Cheng, the governor and the others have been on the road for half a day. They must be tired. Let them go back and rest for a while. We'll talk again after they eat, okay?" Since someone was giving him a way out, Cheng Lisu naturally had to accept it. She said, "I won't argue with you. My heart aches for my uncle and big brother." Finally, the situation before them was alleviated for the time being. Shin Muxiue, who had been silent all this time, walked up to Xiaoju and said, "Second young master, in the secret letter that was sent back, it said that someone was injured. These people all looked normal." Xiaoju glanced at He Yan. He Yan said, "It's me." Shin Muxiue asked, "Do you feel any discomfort?" "It's just some superficial wounds." He Yan smiled and said, "I'll have to trouble Miss Shin to help me find some ointment for external injuries. The ointment from last time is very good." Song Taotao looked at him in surprise. "Young master He, you're injured?" When she didn't see He Yan get injured, she thought nothing had happened. Cheng Lisu pulled He Yan away and stared at Song Taotao as if she was a thief. "Shrew, stay away from my big brother." The two of them started to quarrel again. He Yan was speechless. The energy of a young man was really enviable. When they returned to the garrison, they rested for a while. By the time they finished eating, the sky was already dark. Shen Han said to Xiaoju, "I've cleaned the governor's room every day. Today, I've changed the bedding for him. He can stay here as long as he wants." Xiaoju's love for cleanliness had almost reached the point of paranoia, so Shen Han had already made thorough preparations. Xiaoju nodded and was about to walk in when He Yan tugged on his sleeve. Wait, was he going to whisper to him? Shen Han pondered in his heart. As an outsider, he shouldn't be involved in such a situation. He said, "Governor, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." He didn't wait for Xiaoju to reply and left in a hurry. He Yan pushed Xiaoju into the room. Xiaoju said coldly, "What's the matter?" "Governor, have you forgotten what you promised me? You're the General Feng Yan. You have to keep your word." "What did I say?" Xiaoju looked at her calmly. He Yan was anxious. "Didn't we agree before we came back that you would arrange a new room for me? I don't want to stay in a shared room. Otherwise, it'll be inconvenient for me to bathe and change my dressing." Before Xiaoju could reply, another voice sounded. "Isn't it just a change of room? Why would you need it? I can help you too." The two of them turned around and saw Cheng Lisu running over. Cheng Lisu and Xiaoju's rooms were right next to each other. There was a door in the middle that divided the mansion into two rooms. Usually, Cheng Lisu was forced to copy books. When Xiaoju was reading, she would look at him. Therefore, the door wasn't closed. At this moment, Cheng Lisu ran over from his room. She was too friendly. "Big brother, what do you think of my room?" Ian. If you think my room is good, I'll change rooms with you. Young Master Cheng couldn't wait. We'll move out tonight. I'll go pack my luggage now. Big brother, what do you think? Ian was a little confused. Xiaoju frowned and looked at her nephew, who was used to being different from other people. She asked, "What the hell are you doing?" "Uncle," Cheng Lisu said with a sad face. "Who told you to bring that shrew back?" "I just asked Liang Jiaodo. Song Taotao is temporarily living with Dr. Shen. She's just a few steps away from us. If I live here, won't I have to see her every day? I feel dizzy whenever I see her. It's better if I don't. Since Big Brother also wants to change rooms, I'll change rooms with Big Brother. When Song Taotao leaves, we'll change rooms back." "Ian." "Okay." Xiaoju no. Cheng Lisu's dislike of Song Taotao exceeded his respect for his uncle. He pretended not to hear Xiaoju's words and happily went back to pack his things. Xiaoju said angrily, "Come back here." She reached out to drag him back, but Ian blocked her. Cheng Lisu took the opportunity to run away. With a bang, he closed the door. "Xiaoju, Cheng Lisu, be careful not to scare the child if you're so fierce." Ian looked at him with a smile. "Governor, young Master Cheng has already agreed. It's a matter of mutual consent. How can you interfere here?" His words made it sound like Xiaoju was an unreasonable person who wanted to break up an affectionate couple. Xiaoju sneered. "What right do you have?" "Because I am only one red mole away from being the woman you love deeply." Ian looked at him with a smile. The room suddenly fell silent. Xiaoju looked away in disdain. "Lady He, do you really want to stay in the Liang Province Guards? I've never lied about this." Ian stopped smiling and said seriously, "Not only that, I really want to join the 9 Flags Battalion." "Don't push your luck. I always stop when I'm ahead." Ian said, "Commander-in-Chief, I just need a chance to prove myself. I need to prove that I'm not a bad person, and that I'm worthy of being your confidant." Xiaoju sneered. "You're talking big. You won't even give me a chance. Aren't you being arbitrary?" "You." Xiaoju sized her up and said calmly, "How long can you last in the Liang Province Guards?" "Longer than you think. You're a woman. I won't be discovered. I won't cover for you." Hearing this, Ian smiled. "That's what you want to say, right?" Second young Master Xiao was noble, aloof, and unreasonable. It was impossible for him to cover up the truth for her just because of her words. However, Yan's skills were outstanding. Xiaoju hesitated if he really wanted to give up. After all, in Xiaoju's opinion, it didn't matter whether one was a man or a woman. What mattered was whether one was capable enough, outstanding enough, and worth staying. "If you can't do it, you'll leave." His answer was as heartless as ever. "It's a deal," Yan said. "I'll stay here with my own ability. Whether I enter the 9 Flags Battalion or perform meritorious deeds, I promise I won't let you worry." Xiaoju stared at her. After a while, he raised his eyebrows and asked, "You really want to enter the 9 Flags Battalion?" "Of course." "Okay." Second young Master Xiao smiled. "I'll give you a month to recover. After a month, your daily martial training will be the same as the 9 Flags Battalions." As if he was afraid Yan didn't understand, he added, "The 9 Flags Battalion's martial training will be 3 times more than yours." Yan. Xiaoju, what a heartless man. "If you can take it, stay. If you can't, get out of the Liangzhou Guards." He stared at Yan with a faint smile. His clear eyes were deep and there was a hint of mockery in them. "Lady He, how long can you take it?" Yan replied to him with a gritted teeth smile. "Commander, there's still a long way to go. Just wait and see." Finally, the house was settled. Yan also had to go back to the shared bunk room to pack up his things and meet up with his brothers. When she arrived at the bunk room, before she could enter, Xiaomai, who was leaning against the door far away, noticed her and shouted, "Ehigo, you're back." Whoa, her shout attracted the attention of everyone inside. Instantly, everyone poked their heads out of the room. The bolder one squeezed to Yan's side and asked, "Yan, you came back with Military Governor Xiao? How was it? Did you gain anything from your trip? Was it fun in Liangzhou City? Where did you guys go?" Go. Don't crowd around here." Hong Shan chased them away and let He Yan into the room. You came back just in time. Everyone's here. I was just wondering why they weren't here yet. Ahe, you seem to have lost some weight. You didn't lose anything, right? No. He Yan said as he stepped into the room. He found that it was quite lively. Wang Ba, Jiang Jiao and Huang Xiong were all there. Jiang Jiao said, "We heard that military governor Xiao came back. We thought you would arrive soon, so we waited for you here." He Yan sat down on the couch and sighed. It's good to be back. The Sun family's bed was soft and fluffy, but when he thought about the many girls buried in the courtyard, he felt that it was particularly eerie and terrifying. Although the bedboard was hard and the blankets were thin, his heart was bright and he could sleep soundly. Did your relationship with military governor Xiao improve? Huang Xiong asked. Previously, because the vanguard battalion had selected Huang Xiong, He Yan resented Xiao Ju. This time, when he went to Liangzhou City with Xiao Ju, Hong Shan and the others were afraid that He Yan wouldn't be able to hold back and fight with Xiao Ju midway. It's okay, He Yan said vaguely. Wang Ba sneered and said gloatingly, he doesn't look like much. If he's really good, why did he come back empty-handed? Why didn't he give him anything? As they were talking, Cheng Lisu, who was dragging 3 large suitcases, arrived. She stood at the door and asked He Yan, Ehigo, can I come in? Come in. As soon as Cheng Lisu entered, she was shocked by the room full of people. She said, it's so lively? Won't it be noisy when you sleep at night? Xiao Mai's eyes widened. What's the meaning of this? He Yan smiled and said slowly, I made a great contribution on this trip to Liangzhou. The governor appreciates me very much and has decided to let me and young Master Cheng exchange rooms. Young Master Cheng will live here, and I will live next to the governor as a reward. Everyone was stunned. Is this kid telling the truth? Wang Ba asked Cheng Lisu. It's true. Cheng Lisu cupped her hands respectfully to the others. In the future, please take care of me. The room was like boiling water. Instantly, it became lively. Everyone asked He Yan at the same time. What contribution did you make? What did you do? Just changing rooms? Didn't you give any other rewards? Didn't you enter the vanguard battalion? He Yan, are you going to be promoted? If you get promoted, can you lead the brothers? He Yan was surrounded like a general who had won a battle. On the other side, Shen Han had just learned about Xiao Ju's journey to Liangzhou. Sun Xiangfu has been in Liangzhou for 8 years. The people have no way to make a living. Shen Han sighed. You reap what you sow. He deserves this outcome. He had been in Liangzhou for a few years and had heard of the misdeeds of Sun Xiangfu and his son. However, he was not an imperial censor, nor did he have Xiao Ju's remarkable abilities. He could only swallow his anger. Today, Xiao Ju had uprooted Sun Xiangfu and his son, and caused Yuan Baozhen to suffer without being able to say anything. It was truly gratifying. Governor, on this trip to Liangzhou, have you investigated He Yan's background? Shen Han hesitated for a moment, but still asked. He did not understand the current relationship between He Yan and Xiao Ju. If it was good, then Xiao Ju was clearly guarding against He Yan. If it was not good, then he had just received orders from Cheng Lisu that He Yan would live in Cheng Lisu's room in the future. Didn't that mean he would live next to Xiao Ju? If they were not close, how could they have reached this stage? Could it be that they had rekindled their old feelings? But looking at Xiao Ju's appearance, it did not seem like it. Shen Han had been a bachelor for many years, so he did not know anything about love. But he had heard of the saying that love was hard to break. Perhaps this was the case? You can say that, Xiao Ju said. Speaking of which, He Yan's family situation written in the military registry was not false. He did have a father who was a guard at the city gate. He had a brother who was about the same age, but the young girl was a girl. It was hard to believe. Is he one of us? Shen Han asked carefully. For the time being, there is no harm in treating him as one of us. Xiao Ju lowered her eyes. But there is no need to tell me everything. Shen Han had a rough idea of what was going on, so he said, I understand. I have something for you to do, he said. He Yan answered his brother's questions with difficulty. By the time he returned to his room, it was already night time. Xiao Ju did not like noise, so the place where she lived was rather quiet. When Yin went in, he was still not used to it. He had suddenly changed from a bunk room with more than 10 people to a room that belonged to him. It made him feel as if he was dreaming. Chung Lisu, a young master who was so particular, did not forget to light the incense in the room for him before he left. The light fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose, making him feel very relaxed. Yin lay down on the bed and felt as if he was lying on a ball of cotton. He immediately felt drowsy. She thought that it was indeed extravagant and luxurious. It was not surprising to sleep on such a bed until late in the morning. She caught a glimpse of the middle door again. The middle door was covered by a bead curtain. When the curtain was lifted, the door was revealed. Behind the door was Xiaoju's room. Xiaoju was probably there to supervise Chung Lisu's daily homework, but the door was currently closed. Yin tried to push the door gently, but it did not budge. He did not give up and pushed it hard, but it still did not budge. Xiaoju had actually locked the door from the other side. Yin thought to himself that this was strictly guarded. Those who did not know would think that he was the girl, and she was a rapist who would sneak into other people's rooms at night. Second young master Xiao really could not tolerate even a little bit of sand entering his eyes. Was there a need for this? Second young master Xiao's thoughts were really unpredictable. In the middle of the room, there was a large wooden tub filled with hot water. Yin walked over and put his finger in to test the water. The temperature was just right. This was probably prepared by Shin Han. They were covered in dust from the journey today, and needed a good bath. Yin was very satisfied that he did not have to go to Wulu River to soak in cold water. He was about to take off his clothes when he suddenly thought of something and looked at the middle door. He almost forgot that there was a door here. There were locks on both sides of the middle door. No matter which side was locked, the other side could not be opened unless both sides were opened at the same time. Since Xiaoju had locked his side, Yin had to lock his side as well. Otherwise, if Xiaoju suddenly wanted to come over in the middle of the bath, wouldn't she be completely exposed? Although the consequences of doing so would most likely be that second young master Xiao would feel that she had stained his noble eyes and leave in a huff. Yin locked the middle door before continuing to bathe and change. After changing, she took out the water from the wooden tub and poured it out. Finally, she returned to the room and sat on the bed. Shin Wuxia had already brought the medicine for bandaging her wounds and placed it on the small table beside the bed. Because of the previous time when he said that pure as ice and jade is only for his fiancée, he did not even bother to help her apply the medicine this time. Yin looked in the mirror and unwrapped the cloth to change the medicine inside. Just as she was about to put on a new cloth, she saw a round jade box beside her. This round box was very small, smaller than a person's palm. She almost overlooked it. Yin picked it up and saw the words scar removal and muscle growth written on it. Yin was startled. After a moment, she shook her head and smiled. This girl was indeed meticulous. But this was too considerate. Shin Wuxia was really kind. He was so considerate even to a lowly soldier. He was just an ordinary man. If he was injured, then so be it. He was not a businessman in the brothel. Why would he care about these things? Yin should have thought the same. But just as she was about to put the box back, the image of that night suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. The red candlelight shed tears, the hibiscus curtain was warm, and that warm hand suddenly stiffened when it touched the scar on her back. She was still worried about how to deceive her husband with the lie she had made up, but the man in front of her nonchalantly blew out the candle and avoided the topic. He was still gentle, but she suddenly felt too ashamed to show her face. This was more hurtful than any words or gaze. The cold ointment was applied to the wound. It was a little painful and a little itchy. She asked herself in her heart, "Do you really not care?" It was not like that. She cared a lot. Even if she could do it all over again, she would not be able to let it go. Yin rewrapped the cloth and put the jade box under her pillow. She turned off the light and lay down on the bed. This room was quiet and warm. There was no thunderous snoring from her brothers. There was also no leg that stretched across her body in the middle of the night. She should have fallen asleep immediately. She did not know why, but she felt a little confused and could not fall asleep. Perhaps she should not have thought about the past. The next morning, Yin woke up as usual. She was now living in the courtyard where Xiaoju lived. She was far away from the rest of the soldiers and the martial arts arena. She had to go early. When she went to get the steamed buns and went to the martial arts arena, she met Shen Han, Liang Ping, and the other instructors. He Yin greeted them. Liang Ping looked at her high-spirited appearance and felt jealous. He was an instructor, but he was not promoted as quickly as a soldier. Look, how long had it been? And she was able to live next to the commander-in-chief. She just went out for a trip. How did the commander-in-chief see her in a different light? Shen Han had told them about Sun Xiangfu and his son. However, they did not know what kind of effort He Yan had made, or what kind of contributions she had made. Liang Ping looked up to the sky and sighed. He also wanted to make a contribution. He wanted to be seen in a different light by the commander-in-chief. He wanted to live next to the commander-in-chief. He Yan, you came at the right time. I have something to tell you. Shen Han waved at her. He Yan ran over. Shen Han looked at her and said, the commander-in-chief told me yesterday that you were injured and temporarily could not participate in some intense training. For example, equestrian and crossbow training, you can stop. When we are training these few days, you can find some training that is suitable for you. After a pause he said, but you can't be lazy. You have to come to the martial arts arena every day. You can't miss your morning run. Understood, He Yan said. However, she thought that Xiaoju was quite kind. Although her injury was superficial, it was at least on her back. If she continued to train like before, it would be difficult for her to recover. She was like this in her previous life. Before her old injury healed, she had to lead troops everywhere. Her injury was slow to heal, and her whole body was covered with stubborn old injuries. Although she later became a woman, and was no longer as exposed to the wind and sun as before, her injury would still hurt faintly during the rainy season or the cold winter. It was difficult to heal. She could not endure it, but it would be best if she could not force herself to do so. She thanked Shen Han and went to the martial arts arena. Today they were practicing saber techniques. He Yan had previously sparred with Huang Xiong on the martial arts arena. Everyone knew that her saber techniques were outstanding. She had a good temperament. Whenever someone asked, she would answer patiently with a smile. She was much more amiable than the black-faced instructor. Therefore, whenever the soldiers had any problems, they would always discuss it with her. He Yan was being tugged by a soldier to teach him how to use a knife. Suddenly, a crisp voice called out to him, "Big brother He." She turned around and saw that it was Song Taotao. In the Liang province guards, there was only one young girl, Shen Wuxia. She was regarded as a fairy by the Liang province guards, and no one dared to blaspheme her. Now there was another one. She looked a bit younger than Shen Wuxia. Although she was not as elegant and refined as Shen Wuxia, she was more lovable and cute. She was like a small flower that bloomed in spring. Even her branches carried fragrant fragrances. Her hair was tied up in 2 buns. She lifted her skirt and ran to He Yan's side. She ignored the fiery gazes of the surrounding soldiers, and only looked at He Yan. She asked, "Yesterday I heard from Miss Shen that your injuries were not light. Are you feeling better?" He Yan. When they arrived at the Liang province guards, Song Taotao lived with Shen Wuxia. Therefore no one deliberately paid attention to her. Qi Wu and Fei Nu could not spend all day with a young girl, and not do proper business. Therefore they did not notice when this young girl came to the martial arts arena. She even saw He Yan at first glance. He Yan smiled and said, "Thank you for your concern, Miss Song. It's just a small injury." "How can this be considered a small injury?" Song Taotao tugged on his sleeve. "I'll bring you to Miss Shen to take a look." Needless to say, He Yan could also feel the mischievous expressions of the people around him. Liang Ping's face was about to turn green. What kind of public tugging and pulling was this? Liang Ping had lived for almost 30 years and was still single. Who was He Yan doing this for? However, he could not afford to offend second Miss Song. He could only glare angrily at He Yan and signal He Yan to quickly send Song Taotao away. He Yan was about to speak when he heard an angry shout. "Second Miss Song, what are you doing here?" He Yan felt a headache when he heard this voice. Chung Lisu was like a cat that smelled blood. She followed Song Taotao and came over. When she saw Song Taotao tugging on He Yan's sleeve, she was so angry that she immediately separated the two of them. she said angrily. Don't come near my big brother, My big brother, he already has a fiancé. Song Taotao first looked at He Yin in surprise. Then, she looked at Chung Lisu, who was looking at her proudly. After thinking for a moment, she sneered. So what if I'm your fiancé? You can break off the engagement. I'm still your fiancé. What's the point? Chung Lisu looked like she was struck by lightning. She took a few steps back. The people around them were also dumbfounded. He Yin and Chung Lisu were sworn brothers. Song Taotao was Chung Lisu's fiancé. He Yin also had a marriage contract. However, Song Taotao treated He Yin differently. This was a shocking story with many twists and turns. If there was a hole at this moment, He Yin would crawl into it without looking back. She weakly defended herself. I didn't. Chapter 105. Because of Song Taotao and Chung Lisu's appearance, the training field became a mess. He Yin had a headache. Under Liang Ping's gaze, he tried his best to persuade Song Taotao and Chung Lisu to leave. Although they left, she was left alone to face everyone's different gazes. Hong Shan touched He Yan's arm and asked in a low voice, Is that young Master Cheng's fiancé? He Yan nodded. Hong Shan looked at her with a complicated and admiring gaze. I underestimated you. He Yan. Don't think too much. However, it was clear that Hong Shan was not the only one who thought this way. When the training ended, all of the soldiers immediately gathered around her, all of them asking her what her relationship with Song Taotao was. There was even someone who said sourly, Then let's congratulate young master He in advance. It looks like before long, our Liang province guards will be able to produce a son-in-law for Sir Song. May I ask when young master He is going to treat us to wedding candy? He Yin, don't talk nonsense. How can you slander a girl's reputation with just your words? So what? That person said carelessly. I think second Miss Song is very satisfied with you. Jiang Jiao passed by from the other side and glanced at He Yin. His gaze was as sharp as a knife, as if he wanted to carve out a piece of flesh from her body. He snorted and left in a huff. He Yin was stunned and asked subconsciously, What's wrong with brother Jiang? I didn't provoke him, did I? Jiang Jiao had always been arrogant, but he had a good temperament. Although he was older than He Yin, he was very humble every time he asked He Yin for advice on spear techniques. It was rare for him to give He Yin such a look. Wang Ba said disdainfully, You cuckolded your brother. Who are you insulting? How can little Jiang give you such an attitude? Be more careful. He Yin. That was true. Jiang Jiao's fiancé had eloped with another man and died for love. He hated it the most in his life. When he looked at Chung Lisu, he thought of himself. He Yin was that bastard who stole another man's wife. Who did I cheat on? He Yin suddenly reacted. I didn't. Before she could finish, someone called her name from the other side. He Yin. Xiaohe. Coach is calling me, He Yin said. I'll leave first. The one called He Yin was one of the 3 instructors who had competed with He Yin in equestrian archery, the old man called Ma Damei. The old man waved at her kindly. Xiaohe, I heard that you were injured when you went to Liangzhou City with the governor? It's just a minor injury, He Yin said with a smile. You can't force yourself. You're still young. It won't be good if you get sick, Ma Damei said warmly. Go and eat first. After you're done, come here and find me. He Yin asked, Coach, what's the matter? Of course it's something good. Ma Damei was still very mysterious. You'll know when the time comes. He Yin couldn't figure out what was going on, so he went to eat first. The soldier in charge of the meal had received Shen Han's order and knew that He Yin was injured, so he gave him an extra steamed bun. He Yin ate it on the spot. Then he followed Ma Damei's instructions and went to the training field. The weather was getting colder. It was late autumn, so the sky darkened early. When He Yin arrived at the training field, he saw more than 10 people standing there. They were all the instructors of the Liangzhou City Guards. Ma Damei waved at her. Hey, Xiaohe, over here. He Yin walked forward. Du Mao and Liang Ping were also there. Liang Ping looked at him and asked in surprise, Why did you ask him to come? I heard from the chief instructor that Xiaohe is injured. It's good to bring him along. Liang Ping, don't be so stingy. Ma Damei leaned closer to Liang Ping and whispered, I think the chief instructor takes good care of this kid. Maybe he'll be promoted faster than you and me. There's no harm in getting on his good side in the future. Liang Ping looked at the old man's shrewd sneaky smile and said angrily, "What kind of person do you think I am? I don't know how to get on his good side." "You don't, but I do." Madame I didn't want to bother with him. She walked past Liang Ping and put her arm around He Yan's shoulder. She smiled and said, "Young man, let's go." "Go?" He Yan asked curiously. "Where are we going? Why are there so many instructors here? Even though it's night training, there aren't many people. Are they planning to drink behind Xiaoju's back?" When He Yan was in the Fuyue army, the deputy chief instructor under him also often drank behind his back. However, He Yan was a little flattered that they were bringing a small soldier like him. "Don't ask." Madame I smiled mysteriously again. "You'll know when we get there." He Yan was confused, but he didn't want to refuse their kindness. He guessed that they were either going to play a game or drink, so he didn't refuse. If she was on good terms with these instructors, she might have more bargaining chips when Xiaoju considered whether she could enter the Nine Flags Battalion in the future. "Okay." She immediately agreed with a smile. This group of people did not ride horses. They walked up Mount Baiyue. This road was different from the one they had taken during the flag battle. It was a small path. The instructors were all in high spirits. Along the way, they talked about the recent training of the new recruits, which new recruits were the most outstanding, and whether they had enough firewood this year as winter arrived and it snowed in Liangzhou. He Yan was walking silently when he heard someone say, "Instructor Du, your relative, Lei Ho, has been very impressive in the vanguard recently." When he heard this name, He Yan's ears immediately perked up. After the battle for the flag that day, Xiaoju selected Lei Ho to enter the vanguard. Other than that, there were also the other outstanding recruits from Mount Baiyue. Adding the people from the Liangzhou guards, there were a total of 1,000 people. Even though He Yan was dissatisfied, he quickly followed Xiaoju to Liangzhou city. When he came back, he found out that the training of the vanguard had already started for a while. However, what made her feel strange was that the training of the new recruits in the vanguard was the same as what she knew. It was still a surprise attack. It wasn't the 3 times the amount of training that Xiaoju had mentioned. He Yan had a guess. Maybe the recruits that Xiaoju chose to enter the Nine Flags Battalion and the recruits that entered the vanguard were 2 different things. But she couldn't directly ask Xiaoju about this matter. Therefore, she continued to pay attention to the movements on the other side. "You flatter me." Du Mao was a bit proud when he heard that his relative was praised. "When I saw him that year, this kid had just learned how to walk. He hugged my saber and wouldn't let go. Now that he's this big, he's a bit like me when I was young." "Ha! Do you have any shame?" Liang Ping looked askance at him. "As if we didn't see what you were like when you were young." You're wrong." Another instructor said. "Now that Lei Ho has entered the vanguard and is so outstanding, his future is limitless. I think that in the future it won't be difficult for him to earn merits. Even though our old Du can't do it, but his nephew can. He's not bad. Go to your mother." Du Mao laughed. Probably because He Yan's gaze towards the other side was too obvious, Madame I, who was walking beside her, noticed it. She thought that He Yan was angry that she didn't enter the vanguard and said, "Young man, the road ahead is long. Even though you didn't enter the vanguard, you may not be worse than Lei Ho in the future. Look further, don't be constrained by what's in front of you." He Yan turned her head. Just as she was about to say something, the old man patted her shoulder. "Look, we're here." There was still some distance from here to the mountainside. The white sand and green bamboo, the moonlight was like snow. Niao niao steam rose between the cover of the forest. It was warm but light, like white ink, as if one was in a painting. "How is it?" Madame I chuckled. "I didn't lie to you, right? There's a hot spring here." He Yan muttered. Liang Ping looked at her and snorted. "If you weren't injured, I wouldn't have brought you here." "Wait." He Yan's face was vigilant. "You brought me here. It can't be that you want me to soak in a hot spring, right?" "Of course." Beside them, a slightly cultured instructor heard this and recited a poem in a genteel manner. "Once the lovesick wish is fulfilled, money calls the water sentimental. Steaming before the bath day, steaming heat waves arise. My whole body feels limp. Dispelling illness is miraculous. I don't admire the birds of the heavenly lake. I'm willing to be a person in a hot spring. Warm water cures illness. This is good stuff. That's right, Madame, I said. Since you're injured, soak in the hot spring. It'll be good for you. Ian awkwardly took a step back. No. I didn't bring clean clothes, forget it. It's okay. I brought an extra one. You can wear it, Du Mao said. It's been washed, it's not dirty. I'm afraid of water. Ian continued to take a step back. The pool only reaches your chest when you stand up. We're just watching. What's there to be afraid of? Liang Ping was impatient. Ian racked her brains to come up with a reasonable excuse. Suddenly, the back of her head bumped into someone. She turned around and saw that it was Xiaoju. The young man was wearing a dark green brocade robe with cloud embroidery. His moonlight hair was as black as ink and was held up by a jade hairpin. He was elegant and handsome. He raised his eyebrows and looked at her. He was born with an outstanding appearance. Standing in the secluded scenery, his clothes were like clear snow. Autumn moon dust could not be offended. Ian said, Commander-in-Chief. Commander-in-Chief. Du Mao and the others shouted. Commander-in-Chief is also here to soak in the hot spring? Ian was shocked. Xiaoju was actually soaking in the hot spring with these instructors? The scene was hard to imagine. Xiaoju pulled her to the side and reached out to pat the spot she had touched. She looked very disgusted. Ian heard Madame explain. There are 2 hot springs here. They're not far from each other. The smaller one is usually used by the Commander-in-Chief. The bigger one is for us to soak in. Has the Commander-in-Chief finished soaking in the hot spring? Du Mao asked. Xiaoju nodded. That's right. Then I'll go soak in the hot spring. Ian said hurriedly. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the instructors looking at her in unison. I mean, since the Commander-in-Chief has already soaked in the hot spring, that hot spring is smaller. I'll soak in it myself. Anyway, it's a waste to do nothing. Liang Ping, Xiaoju said calmly. Yes. Liang Ping scolded. Ian, is the Commander-in-Chief's hot spring something you can touch? Hurry up and come over. Why aren't you afraid of the water now? Aren't you afraid that you'll drown in there, and no one will find out? This was back to the original topic. Ian turned his back to the instructors and turned to Xiaoju. He whispered anxiously, Tell me. Xiaoju crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked calmly at the anxious Xiaoju. She said slowly, I said that I won't help you cover it up. Then I didn't know that they would bring me to the hot spring. Ian was furious. If this continues, I'll have to fight with them to get out of here. Oh, Xiaoju nodded with interest. Then you can have a good fight. He turned to leave. Ian gritted her teeth and said, Aren't you afraid that I'll tell them about the red mole on your waist? In the end, she felt that her words were powerless. Xiaoju was not really threatened by her words. Sure enough, this person only laughed. Do as you wish. Xiaoju. The young man's eyebrows were handsome, and his eyes were like ripples in the autumn water. He seemed to be smiling coldly, but the words he said were not gentle at all. Instead, they were cold and mocking. Liar, he said. If you're discovered, what will you do? After saying this, he no longer paid any attention to Ian and turned around to leave. Xiao. Before Ian could finish, someone grabbed her arm. It was Liang Ping, who could not stand it anymore. He said angrily, Why are you dawdling? Don't push your luck. It's good enough that I brought you to the hot spring. There are tens of thousands of new soldiers in the city guard station. And you still want to go to the governor's place? You're too bold. Ian struggled and laughed. I don't want to soak in the hot spring at all. Another hand grabbed his shoulder and said to the others, This guy looks handsome. Why is he so unkempt? Just a little bit of water is enough to kill him. Madame looked at her with a smile. Young man, you haven't soaked in a hot spring before, right? Don't be afraid. Once you soak in it, you'll know the benefits. Ian thought that this could not go on. It seemed that the only way was to fight with them and escape. After that, she could just make up an excuse to get away. Just as she was about to make a move, someone suddenly jumped behind her and kicked her. This kick was not very heavy, But because Hien was being pulled by Liang Ping and Du Mao, her body was unbalanced. As a result, she was kicked into the hot spring. Plop! The people on the shore and in the water immediately burst into laughter. Hey! The culprit who kicked him stood by the water and laughed happily. Little brother, I helped you. You don't have to thank me. Hien popped her head out of the water and shook the water droplets off her forehead. She cursed in her heart. Who wants to thank you? When the rest of the people saw Hien enter the water, they took off their clothes and entered the water. They were really magnanimous. Hien was so shocked that she immediately turned her head. All she saw was white flesh. The spring water in the mountain was warm and light. It wrapped around her body and was very comfortable. However, Hien was not in the mood to enjoy it. First of all, she was afraid of water now. Even though the spring water was not deep, her heart was still flustered. Second of all, it was easy to get in but difficult to get out. Although the spring water was steaming and her body was submerged in the water, her identity as a woman would not be discovered for the time being. However, once she came out of the water, her clothes would stick to her body. As long as one was not blind, they would be able to see her. Moreover, this group of men was having fun playing in the water. Who knew if they would be kind later and make the situation even more difficult to deal with? The more one was afraid of something, the more likely it would happen. She stayed away from the crowd and soaked alone. She was noticed by everyone at a glance. The instructor who kicked her said, "Hey, why didn't you take off your clothes? Since you came down, don't you feel uncomfortable soaking in your clothes?" "No need." Hien forced a smile and said, "I like to soak in my clothes." This hobby was a little unusual for ordinary people. The other instructors looked at each other. Someone stared at him and laughed. Is this guy shy? His words stirred up 1,000 waves. This time the other instructors spoke openly. No way. I don't think he's the type to be shy normally. I think it's possible. This guy is as delicate and pretty as a girl. Maybe he's like that in private too. That won't do. How can a man of the Liang province guard be so shy? Why don't you call us over to train him today and fulfill our duties as instructors? After saying that, several people swam towards Hien. Hien was shocked. What do you want to do? Of course we're going to train new recruits. Du Mao laughed. If we have to go to war in the future, won't you ruin our plans by being so unsociable? Was it necessary to go on the water like this? Hien turned around and swam. It would have been better if she did not swim. Once she swam, the other instructors seemed to find it interesting. One by one the other instructors came over. In an instant, Hien felt as if he had become the ball in the Kuju game. Everyone fought to be first and blocked him from all directions. In an instant, the hot spring became lively. If they were in a different place and situation, this scene could be considered harmonious. The usually serious instructors were laughing and joking. It was obvious that they treated her as one of their own and made fun of her. However, in this situation, Hien could not bring himself to laugh. As she dodged their movements, she cursed in her heart. What kind of people were these? Was there something wrong with the instructors of the Liang Province Guard? In this situation, the only way to completely avoid them was to knock them all out. It would be fine if they were on the shore, but it was really difficult underwater. Moreover, there were so many of them that she had nowhere to hide. She swam with all her might, unaware that one of the instructors had grown up near the water and was familiar with the water. He had already dived into the water and quietly swam in front of her. Hien was only paying attention to what was behind her. How could she see what was in front of her? Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm from the water, and she could not dodge in time. That instructor acted as if he had snatched the ball in the Kuju game. He even called out to his friends and shouted, "I caught her! Come quickly!" Come quickly? Come quickly for what? Hien was shocked. However, she could not use her strength underwater and was unable to break free. She watched as Du Mao and the others swam closer and closer, looking as if they were going to take off her clothes. She could not help but break out in a cold sweat. She did not want her identity to be discovered here. At this critical moment, the hand that was holding her arm suddenly loosened, and the head instructor cried out, "Ouch!" Something that looked like a stone flew past the surface of the water and quickly sank to the bottom. At the same time, Hien was lifted out of the water and landed on the shore. A cloak wrapped tightly around her neck. Everything happened too quickly. No one had time to react. After standing still, Hien turned her head to look and said in surprise, "Commander-in-Chief?" It was actually Xiaoju who had returned. He grabbed Hien out of the water and wrapped Hien into a cocoon. Other than Hien, no one knew why. The instructors looked at him in confusion and looked at each other. "What are you doing?" At this time, another person's voice sounded. Shenhan walked out from the depths of the forest with clothes in his hands. He did not expect to see this scene. Looking at Hien's wet hair standing beside Xiaoju, the other instructors hiding in the water were dumbstruck. A bad premonition flashed through their hearts. Liang Ping said, "We are soaking in the hot spring." Shenhan was frightened. "Hien, you also?" "Hien." "Yes." Shenhan was shocked. Although men and men were different from men and women, Shenhan knew that people were possessive. He didn't even want to show his saber to other people because he didn't want them to think about it. This Hien. His relationship with Xiaoju was unclear, but it had been seen by someone, and someone else at that. How could Xiaoju be happy about it? Something big happened. The instructors all gathered in a circle. They knew that Xiaoju was a cold person, so they didn't dare to stand up naked. They all only stuck their heads above the water and stared at Hiju and Yan Liqiang. They wanted to ask something but didn't dare to. Their faces were filled with confusion. They were like a group of ducks waiting to be fed. Hien thought of this and could not help but laugh out loud. Xiaoju glanced at him and raised her eyebrows. "You can still laugh." Hien immediately stopped talking. The instructors did not dare to speak. The situation was very awkward. As the chief instructor, Shenhan could not stand there and not speak. After hesitating for a long time, he asked, "Commander-in-Chief, are you going to take Hien back?" "Ask her." "Ah," Hien quickly said. "I'm good with the hot spring. It's enough. I want to go back." "I'll go back with you, Commander-in-Chief." "Oh, that's good, that's good." Shenhan did not know what to say. When he saw that Hien's cloak was actually Xiaoju's, he panicked and did not know where to look. He looked down at his shoes and said, "Commander-in-Chief, you and Hien should go back and rest early. It's cold at night on the mountain." Although he did not understand why Shenhan suddenly became so frightened, Hien was still very grateful for the way out. He smiled and said, "If that's the case, we won't stay any longer." After saying this, he turned around and wanted to leave. After taking 2 steps, he saw that Xiaoju did not move. He was stunned. Before he could say anything, he heard Xiaoju speak. He said, "Don't take her to the hot spring in the future." Shenhan's heart thumped. His mind was full of thoughts. It's over, it's over, it's over. At this time, there was still someone who did not know what was good for him. The instructor who had dived into the water and was good at swimming had a wet head. He gathered his courage and asked, Why? Isn't he injured? Isn't it better to soak in the hot spring?" Hien said in his heart, "Brother, I really have to thank you." "You don't know." Xiaoju faced the crowd. He stood tall and graceful and curved his lips elegantly. His eyes were full of mockery. This recruit, before he entered the camp, he was already checked. He spat out 4 words from his thin lips. Every word made Hien dizzy and dizzy. "He has a hidden disease." He has a hidden disease? The man who asked the question did not notice and choked on a mouthful of water. He coughed violently. The atmosphere was even stiffer than before. What was even more unbearable was the way the instructors looked at Hien. Their gazes were a mix of sympathy, surprise, and regret. Some of them even looked at Hien's lower body. Hien. Although she had randomly made up an excuse when she was checking, she was only one person. When they set off, the checking physician would not be with them. Therefore, no one knew. Now, how was she going to get along with these instructors in the future? Xiaoju was deliberately making trouble for her. Was it because he was happy to see her in a difficult situation? What kind of fun was this? "Actually, my condition is not that serious." She weakly defended herself. However, everyone believed Military Governor Zhao's words without a doubt. The only one who did not believe was Shenhan. Shenhan thought that Xiaoju was deliberately lying to protect Hien from being provoked. "It's okay, Liang Ping was originally a little jealous of He Yan. Now it was all gone. What else could he be angry about? He even said enthusiastically, "It's not a big problem. You can slowly recover. I know a physician who specializes in this. Maybe in the future, you can still be saved." He Yan had nothing to say. He said, "Thank you, instructor. See you later." Then he ran away. Xiao Ju said, "You guys can continue." Then she walked away unhurriedly. Shen Han stood at the edge of the hot spring in a daze. When everyone could no longer see Xiao Ju's shadow, they gathered their courage and began to talk. Du Mao swam towards the edge of the hot spring and approached Shen Han's feet. He looked up and asked, "Chief Instructor, did you already know about it? I was wondering why you were so nice to this kid. So there was a reason. TSK, how did he get this disease at such a young age? Can it be cured?" "Cure my ass." Shen Han was furious. He kicked him back into the water and said, "I think you guys are tired of living. Cure your own brains first." The hot spring was left behind. In the dense forest, He Yan followed Xiao Ju and walked towards the city center. The person beside her walked at a steady pace, just enough for her to keep up. He Yan squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth. "Thank you." "You look very reluctant." The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. "If you're not convinced, you can turn back." The cloak she was wearing belonged to Xiao Ju. Moreover, if Xiao Ju had not helped her, who knows what would have happened? Thinking of this, her complaints dissipated a little. She said, "Don't say that. I sincerely thank you, Chief." Xiao Ju snorted, flattery. This person really couldn't listen to bad words, but he also couldn't listen to good words. He Yan paused and waved her fist at his back. "Liar." He was speechless for a moment. "Don't you know that there are shadows under the moon?" He Yan paused and subconsciously looked down. Under the moonlight, her baring fangs and brandishing claws fell behind Xiao Ju's shadow. It was like a funny shadow play. "I just saw a mosquito, so I helped you get rid of it." She lied without changing her expression. "You don't have to thank me." When Xiao Ju heard this, he laughed and continued to walk forward. The night was long and rogue. His back was leisurely and lazy, like a floating spring dream. He Yan saw that he was in a good mood and said, "I just don't understand. Since you had already decided to help me, why did you wait until the last moment to help?" If Xiao Ju had helped her when she first arrived at the hot spring, he would not have had to turn back and waste the cloak, and she would not have fallen into the water and become a drowned rat. "I'm teaching you a lesson." "What?" Xiao Ju paused. "Madame, I asked you to go with her, so you went with her. You didn't even ask why you were going. Lady He, are you stupid or conceited to put yourself in such a situation?" This was a lesson, but He Yan still did not understand. "Then I already knew when I saw the hot spring. You didn't have to let me fall into the water and suffer, right? Only when you are forced into a desperate situation will you learn what a lesson is." He said calmly, "You can't trust others. When you are in a desperate situation, you can only rely on yourself. So, try not to put yourself in danger." He Yan was speechless. Although what he said was not wrong, He Yan felt that this lesson was too radical. She muttered softly, "Who teaches people like this?" She didn't know if Xiao Ju heard her. But it didn't matter. He didn't turn back and continued to walk forward. Chapter 106. That night, He Yan's entire body was soaked. When he returned home, he once again fetched water to bathe in his room, and changed into dry clothes before stopping. Xiao Ju's cloak was wet. He Yan went to find Wuxia to find some pancreatic soap to wash it clean. He tied a rope to a tree outside the door and hung it properly. He planned to give it back to Wuxia when it was dry. It was a bit of a hassle, but the good intentions of the group of Liang Province Guard instructors were not completely wasted. When he woke up the next day, He Yan only felt that his entire body was free of worry. The morning was warm and comfortable. The hot springs could cure illnesses. It wasn't nonsense. She quickly climbed out of bed to freshen up and hurried up. When it was time to eat, she saw the people of the vanguard training their paces on the practice field. Lei Ho stood at the very front. The vanguard battalion and the normal recruits were already differentiated in terms of their clothing. The normal recruits only had 2 sets of clothing, one red and one black. In spring and summer, they wore unlined clothing. In autumn and winter, there was a thin layer of cotton sewn between the layers. Other than the belt, the clothing didn't have any other adornments. The cut wasn't very fitting. The large clothing would have the sleeves rolled up. For those who were slightly fatter like Hong Shan, the clothing would be stretched taut, as if it would tear apart at any moment. The people of the Vanguard Battalion wore dark blue riding uniforms. The fabric was much finer than theirs. It also seemed to fit them very well. This group of people were the 1,000 most outstanding people chosen from the Liang Province Guard. Each of them had an imposing appearance. Standing there, they made people feel intimidated. Lei Ho was born tall and outstanding. When he wore the riding uniform, it seemed as if it was tailor-made for him. Yesterday, he heard the instructors say that his performance in the Vanguard Battalion was also very outstanding. It was probably because of this that the instructors had him stand at the very front of the line. Thus, he was awe-inspiring and particularly eye-catching. Yan was entranced by the sight. Suddenly, Hong Shan walked up behind him. Seeing this scene, he patted his shoulder. "What's wrong? You don't feel good?" "No," Yan said. "I just feel that the clothing of the Vanguard Battalion is much better looking than our clothing." "Not just clothes?" Upon hearing this, Xiao Mai interrupted. "I heard that they eat better than us. They get 2 more steamed buns and meat porridge every day." "All right, stop talking." Hong Shan interrupted Mai Mai's incessant chatter. "Can't you see that your brother he is annoyed?" "Hien. I'm not jealous of him." "That's right." Xiao Mai was afraid that Hien would be sad, so she added. "He was defeated by A He. What's so great about him?" Hien smiled. Just as he was about to speak, Lei Ho seemed to have noticed their gazes and turned his head. When he saw Hien, he was startled, but he quickly shifted his gaze and focused on training. "This kid is pretty wild." Hong Shan sighed. "Incredible." Hien didn't make a sound. He continued to stand in place, watching Lei Ho train for a while. Only when Liang Ping urged them to hurry over did Hien give up. Just as the instructors had said, Lei Ho's footwork was not bad. He was nimble and agile. He was indeed worthy of being a member of the Vanguard Battalion. However, Hien still remembered that many days ago, during the battle for the flag on White Moon Mountain, she had fought with Lei Ho. At that time, the situation had been urgent. She had felt a trace of unnaturalness, but she couldn't think too much about it. Afterwards, she had thrown the matter to the back of her mind. Seeing Lei Ho today, it had brought back the memories of that day's fight. But she still couldn't think of a conclusion. What was unnatural about it? Liang Ping urged her fiercely. Hien got up and went to the weapons rack to get her spear. She thought to herself, forget it. In any case, we're both in the Liang Province Guard. If it really doesn't work out, I'll find another opportunity to fight with Lei Ho in a few days. However, before Hien could fight with Lei Ho, she received news that Xiao Ju was leaving. The Liang Province Guard received an urgent report that the citizens of Zhongtai City, which was thousands of li away from Liang Province, had been harassed by the Yudo. As soon as the Yudo arrived, they would steal money and food, and bully men and women. The Zhongtai County Magistrate was miserable beyond words. He could only ask Xiao Ju for help. He asked Xiao Ju to lead the troops to expel these Yudo. The Yudo country had bowed its head to the Dawei long before the previous emperor had been on the throne, paying tribute every year. However, ever since the current emperor ascended the throne, the Yudo had been restless. After the southern barbarian and western Chang rebellions had been quelled, the Yudo had also been quiet for a period of time. However, for some reason, they had become more aggressive and dared to directly harass the citizens at the border. The emperor was magnanimous and turned a blind eye to the Yudo's actions. In addition, there was Prime Minister Su's faction in the court that supported peace, so the other generals did not dare to take on this hot potato. It was probably because of this that the Zhongtai County Magistrate sought help from Xiao Ju in Liang Province. "Commander-in-Chief, when are we leaving?" The military instructors were all standing in Xiao Ju's room. Hien was sitting at the spot where Cheng Lisu usually wrote. The door was not closed, so they did not avoid Hien from talking about this matter. However, there was nothing to hide. It would take a month to travel to and from Zhongtai. If Xiao Ju was not there, it would be noticed. Tomorrow. So early? Liang Ping was surprised. But the army has not had time to tell the vanguard. No need, Xiao Ju said. I don't plan on bringing them. The instructors looked at each other, but He Yan was not surprised. Even though the new recruits of the Liang Province Guard had been training for more than half a year, they had never been on the battlefield. Rushing to Zhangtai after a long journey, and then fighting with the Wutua people in Zhangtai was not the best plan. It would consume too much energy, and the Yudo was cunning and brutal. The new soldiers might not be a match for them. After thinking about it, Xiao Ju's Nanfu soldiers were the most suitable. If Xiao Ju brought the new soldiers to Liang Province, the Nanfu soldiers should be stationed somewhere else. With the military power in his hands, it was perfectly justifiable for him to lead the soldiers there. If he received good news, the emperor would be happy and reward him with something. She could also follow him and become an immortal. Thinking about this, he nodded secretly. He felt that Xiao Ju's decision was very good. He also told the military instructors what they needed to pay attention to in the coming days. When it was late at night, they all left. Xiao Ju stood up from the table and walked to the door. He reached out to lock the door. Unexpectedly, someone blocked him from behind. He Yan's head poked out from behind the door. What are you doing? He asked. He Yan did not let him close the door. He tilted his head and looked at him. Commander-in-Chief, are you leaving tomorrow? Xiao Ju ignored him and closed the door. He Yan's body was half stuck in the door. He could not close it, so he simply ignored it and walked into the room. He Yan easily crossed the door and entered his room. He followed behind him and asked politely, Commander-in-Chief, have you thought about bringing me with you to Zhangtai? You. Xiao Ju sneered. Why would I bring you? Do you think there are not enough people holding us back? In this person's eyes, perhaps everyone other than him was a burden. You are underestimating me. I can help you deal with the Yudo. Forget it. He looked her up and down and raised his eyebrows. A bodyguard can injure you, and you still want to talk about fighting the Yudo. Lady He, you are dreaming. Last time was a special situation. Ding Yi is not an ordinary person. He Yan defended himself, but he knew that Xiao Ju was right. Her injuries had not healed yet. These days, she was very careful even when she was training. She was afraid that it would affect her injuries. If she followed him to Zhangtai, she might cause trouble on the battlefield. Moreover, she couldn't use her expertise in arranging troops. In a troop, it was enough to have one main general. Okay, He Yan said with some regret. Suddenly, he thought of something and looked at Xiao Ju. Commander-in-Chief, it will take a month to go to Zhangtai and back. Plus, you will fight the Yudo. I am afraid that when you come back, it will be late winter. My wounds have mostly healed, so what else can I do for the next few days? Even if it is 3 times daily training, you won't deny it if I do it when you are not here, right? Or, she stared at Xiao Ju suspiciously. You want to use the battle in Zhangtai to escape? Don't tell me you don't want to go back to the Liang Province Guard? You want to leave me here alone? Xiao Ju stopped tidying up the books on the table and turned around. He Yan, who was looking up at her, was shocked. His eyes fell on He Yan's face. He lowered his head and said, First, I am not as bored as you. Second, you are not my fiancé. I don't want to leave you here alone. Third, I am not here. Isn't that what you want? What do you mean by what I want? He Yan said. Don't accuse me wrongly. He stared at He Yan with a faint smile. His dark eyes were deep. He asked, Oh, then why are you asking so much? Is it important when I will come back or if I will come back? Of course it is important. He Yan blurted out. I will miss you. How could she not miss him? The more outstanding she was in front of Xiao Ju and won Xiao Ju's favor and trust, the faster and more aboveboard she could approach He Rufei as an equal. He was a living bodhisattva. How could she not miss him? Xiao Ju seemed to be surprised by her words. She turned her head and said, You really can say anything. Don't call me a liar. Other than my identity, I have never lied to you. What I said just now was true. Won't you miss me when we are apart? Xiao Ju said, No, I won't. He Yan said, We have been through life and death together. You don't have to be so heartless. Xiao Ju asked, Are you done? If you are, please go back to your room. I am going to lock the door. He grabbed He Yan's shoulder and pushed He Yan towards the door. Commander, sometimes I feel that our identities have been reversed. You are so guarded against me. It is as if you are the woman, and I will sully your innocence. You talk too much. He Yan's legs were stuffed into her room. She knew that this person really did not want her to stay in the room. She took advantage of the fact that her upper body could still move and quickly took out a handful of things and stuffed them into Xiao Ju's hands. Bang! The door was slammed shut. He Yan said through the door, "Although you are so heartless, I am still a righteous person. I have nothing to send you off to Zhangtai. Here, I will give you these. Eat them slowly on the way. I will wait for your good news at the guard station." Then, without waiting for a reply, he went to bed, blew out the lamp, and went to sleep. On the other side of the door, Xiao Ju lowered her head and looked at her palm. It was a handful of sweet persimmon candy wrapped in a thin layer of pastry paper. Just by looking at it, she felt that it was fragrant and sweet. Song Taotao and Chengli were the same. Ever since they came to the Liang province guard station, they would send small gifts every few days. She loved sweets, so she asked Qi Wu to go to the city and buy a lot. She also gave some to He Yan. He Yan thought that Xiao Ju always carried the sachet of osmanthus candy with him when he was young. It was true that he loved sweets. Last time, he did not want to eat the candied haws that she bought for him. It was probably because she bought it from a street vendor in the city. Second young master Xiao did not want to eat these kinds of roadside snacks. However, this handful of sweet persimmon candy was made by Song Taotao and Qi Wu at a proper restaurant. This should be able to please Xiao Ju. He could not possibly refuse to eat this. That would be too picky. Hopefully, he would understand the principle of giving candy in return for a plum. He Yan woke up the next day and went to the practice field for day training. When it was almost noon and lunchtime, Chengli ran over. In order not to see Song Taotao, he had moved to the shared room that He Yan used to live in. Everyone thought that he would not be able to hold on for long. They did not think that he would be able to hold on until now. However, compared to the room he used to live in, it was much simpler. It was difficult for him to maintain his elegant appearance. His face had lost a lot of weight, and he had forgotten to match his hairband with his clothes. He panted as he ran in front of He Yan. He Yan was drinking wild vegetable soup, and was almost knocked down by Chengli Su. He Yan asked, "What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry?" "My uncle," Chengli said. "Big brother, my uncle has left." "I know." "You know?" Chengli was stunned. He then said angrily, "Then why didn't you tell me? If Shen Jiaodo did not tell me today, I would not have realized that he had already left." "He has already left?" He Yan was also slightly surprised. When she woke up in the morning, she did not pay attention to Xiao Ju. She thought that Xiao Ju would leave later. She did not expect him to leave so early. He probably did not want to disturb anyone else. Why did he not take Song Taotao with him when he left? Chengli began to complain. Who is he trying to make trouble for by staying in the Liang province guard? He Yan was speechless. Logically speaking, Song Taotao was such a delicate and cute little girl. Young men would be eager to please her. Chengli actually avoided her like a snake or scorpion. What kind of taste did this child have? She asked. What did Song Taotao do to you? I think she is also sensible and well-behaved. Big brother, please forgive me, Chengli said bitterly. When I first found out about this marriage, I wanted to sneak a peek. Who knew that I would run into her? I don't know how she guessed my identity. She scolded me at the door. Scolded you for what? What else could it be? You are not good at literature or martial arts. You are a good-for-nothing with no future. That is fine. Everyone in Shuo City knows that I am incompetent. If it was just that, I would not be so angry. However, she later said that it is fine to marry me, but I must study hard at home and pass the imperial examinations. In the future, when I enter an official's career, I must strive to reach the top. If it is really difficult to study, I can also take the path of the military examination. In the end, I must be a hard-working person. How can there be such a vicious woman in this world? Speaking of this matter, Chung Lisu's resentment soared to the sky. My beloved miss must also be like me, not fighting for other people's business, free and unrestrained, free from the dust of the world, enjoying wine together, making fun together, just like me. If I really get together with her, what is the difference between spending the rest of my life in prison? Therefore, big brother, don't say anything good about her. I am really scared and do not want to live that kind of life. Ian did not know what to say even if he wanted to persuade him. Sometimes when two people interacted, love at first sight was one thing, and not getting tired of each other was another. You hoped that he would be determined and hardworking, but he would yearn for the clouds and wild crane. They were not the same type of people, but they wanted to be together. Even if it was hard to notice at the time, time would tell. In her previous life, she did not understand the principles that she did not understand in her entire life. She was not as clear as the two children. If you really don't like her, then think of a way to cancel the engagement. You don't have to be so picky about her. Being friends is good enough. Ian thought for a moment before speaking. Forget it. Chung Li-su waved his hand, as if he did not want to talk about it. I really can't be friends with her. Our views are different. Ian changed the topic and asked Chung Li-su if he wanted to move to Xiao Ju's room since Xiao Ju had left. Chung Li-su unexpectedly refused and only said that he wanted to be as far away from Song Taotao as possible. It was as if he was avoiding the plague. When the day's training ended, Ian returned to his room. After washing up, he stared blankly at the locked door. Although Xiao Ju usually didn't talk to her much, she knew that he was just a door away from her. Once he left, he really felt that he was the only one in the huge room. It was very lonely. Suddenly, he missed the time when he lived with Xiao Mai and the others in the shared bunk. At that time, he would not feel bored listening to their idle conversations. If it was too quiet, he would not be able to sleep. If he could not sleep, it would be easy for his imagination to run wild. Ian sat up from the couch and thought for a moment. He got up, put on his shoes, walked to the door, and took out a silver strand from his sleeve. This silver strand was from Chung Li-su's hairpin. The hairpin was made into a yellow carp, and the silver strand was the carp's beard. It was very cute. The first time Ian saw it, he touched it a little too hard and directly pulled the beard off. Chung Li-su said that it was okay, and that she could just throw it away. Ian felt a little distressed and thought that he might be able to sell it for tea, so he put it away. At this time, she took out the curly silver strand and straightened it. She stretched it out through the crack of the door and put her ear on the door, listening carefully. This was a unique skill that a craftsman taught her when she was in the military camp. That craftsman was a locksmith. Sometimes, when a big family's ancestors or accidentally dug out a locked box, they would go to him to open it. He was quite famous in his hometown. Later, when the city captured strong men and conscripted them, the locksmith hid his children and grandchildren and did it himself. Ian still remembered that the locksmith was a little old. When he smiled, he was missing an incisor, which was a little funny. Ian and his grandson were about the same age, so Ian hit it off with him. He even taught Ian a few lockpicking moves. The locksmith had already died in the Battle of Mo County, but Ian still remembered the lockpicking skills. That locksmith knew how to open the shaped locks used by officials and nobles, and the G-shaped locks used for weddings and celebrations. However, he only taught Ian the E-shaped locks used by commoners. He probably thought that one day, if he could return to his hometown and go back to his old profession, he could still make a living with his skills. He couldn't teach his disciple and starve his master, who knew that in the end he didn't succeed. Ian tried to open the lock with a fluke. Fortunately, the door in Xiao Ju and Chung Li-su's room was exactly the E-shaped door. However, in a moment, there was a gotcha sound and the door on the other side was opened. Ian gently pushed and the door opened. The moonlight fell on the desk in front of the window. The window wasn't closed, so the shadows of the trees outside swayed slightly and fell on the ground like water plants in a pond. Ian tiptoed in and stood still after entering. She didn't know why she did such a thing and was annoyed for a moment. If someone was hiding in the dark, they would probably think that she was a thief. She wasn't here to steal anything, and it wasn't her first time in Xiao Ju's room. She opened the door because she couldn't sleep and was bored to death. However, since she was already here, it would be a pity to leave now. Ian looked around and saw that Xiao Ju's drinking sword wasn't hanging on the wall. There were 2 or 3 books scattered on the table. Ian leaned over to take a look, and saw that they were all military books. He didn't take his guqin and hid it to the side. Under the moonlight, it glowed like a rare treasure. Xiao Ju's room wasn't very luxurious. In fact, compared to Cheng Li Su's complex room, it was a bit too simple, so much so that it felt a bit bleak. However, He Yan remembered that second young master Xiao used to be very particular when he was at Xianchangguan. The room that he lived in was even more luxurious than Shibao's room. The floor was covered with a blanket, and it didn't feel cold at all in the winter. He seemed to be afraid of the cold. When the weather turned cold, he would always wear brocade clothes and a fox fur coat. However, this room was cold and not as warm as it used to be. What did he go through all these years to become the commander-in-chief of the right army? He Yan thought about it and unknowingly walked to the table. Her fingers touched something and she looked down. She saw that beside the pen holder, there was a handful of colorful granules. She picked them up and looked at them under the moonlight. They were the persimmon gummies that she had stuffed into Xiao Ju's hands yesterday. The gummies had been outside for a long time and were not as soft as before. The sweet smell also seemed to have faded a lot. He Yan counted them. Not a single one was missing. He didn't touch them and just left them here? He didn't try one or two and didn't bring them to Zhang Tai. Why was that? Even if it was because he thought that the candied gummies were too crude, or because of second young Master Zhao's pride, it was fine if he didn't want them. These gummies were made by a pastry chef in a restaurant in the city. Although they weren't delicacies, they were definitely not crude. She had stuffed them into Xiao Ju's hands and closed the door last night. No one saw whether Xiao Ju had taken them or not, and what his reaction was. However, if he really liked sweets, he wouldn't have left them here. She could almost see him casually throwing the gummies on the table, and not even looking at her. Was he afraid that she had poisoned them? Or had Xiao Ju's taste changed over the years? There was no answer to this question. He Yan pondered. Suddenly, she felt something sweep across her face, bringing with it a slight coolness and moisture. It was furry. She looked up and saw salt-like things fluttering down from the outside, flying with the wind to the front of the table. It was late at night, and the sound of bamboo breaking could be heard. She took 2 steps forward. Through the window, she could see the towering Mount Baiware in the distance. The moonlight was cold and distant, falling on the wilderness and dancing with the snow in front of her eyes. "It's snowing," she said quietly in her heart. It turned out that the winter snow of the Liang province guards had arrived so early. Chapter 107. It was winter and the weather was very cold. Winter in Liangzhou was colder than the capital. During the day, it was still okay as they could warm their bodies during training. However, at night it was extremely cold. The amount of firewood in the basin was far from enough. The number of soldiers who went to Wulu River to bathe also decreased. They all went to boil water to bathe themselves. Yan was the same. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Ju had been gone for more than half a month. She estimated that Xiao Ju should have reached Zhangtai by now. However, the instructors did not talk about this on a daily basis. Yan also did not know the situation in Zhangtai. She still trained with the new soldiers every day. However, because her body was not fully recovered, she could not follow Xiao Ju's triple daily training. On this day, Yan and the new soldiers were training in the martial arts field. When it was almost evening, the training ended. Yan talked to Hongshan and a few others. Hongshan rubbed his hands and blew into his palms. "Ehi, do you feel that it is too cold these few days?" "It's okay," Yan replied. When she was in the Fuyua army, she had fought in the winter near the river. The tents were set up by the river. At night, the wind was biting cold and there was no firewood to burn. The soldiers slept together at night to ward off the cold. That was what it meant to be truly cold. "You young people can withstand the cold." Hongshan sighed and looked in the direction of Baiwa Mountain. "Why does it snow in Liangzhou every day? It lasts for an entire night." Yan followed his gaze. Baiwa Mountain in winter was not as green as it was in summer. At a glance, the mountain was covered in white snow. The new soldiers went up the mountain every few days to chop firewood. They could not go further up the mountain. The higher they went, the thicker the snow. It was not safe. "Actually, this weather is the best for hunting." Xiao Mai came over and said, "Big brother and I used to soak food in wine during the day and throw it beside the cave. There was nothing to eat during the winter. We ate rabbits and foxes when we saw them. When we went out at night, there was prey all over the ground. It was effortless and simple. The White Moon Mountain is so big, there should be a lot of rabbits and foxes. He licked his lips. Stop, Hien urged. I think you'd better give up on this idea. The terrain on the mountain is complicated, and the snow is thick. Don't become a rabbit before the rabbit is hunted. Ahigu really looks down on us, Xiaomai muttered. As they were talking, they saw a group of new recruits coming down from the end of the horse path that led from the martial arts practice field to Mount Baiyue. Walking in the middle was the female doctor, Shen Wuxia. She was wearing a moon-white coat and skirt, with an apricot-colored long cloak embroidered with plum blossoms draped over her shoulders. Her hair tie was also plain white. As she slowly walked out of the snow-colored sky, she looked even more beautiful and fairy-like. Hong Shan stared blankly at her and said, I can't believe there is such a woman in the world. She's so beautiful and kind-hearted. On such a cold day, a weak woman went up the mountain to gather medicine for the injured. Only a fairy could be so compassionate. Finally, he asked Hien, Don't you think so? Hien said, That's right. Every few days, the new recruits took turns going up the mountain to gather firewood. Shen Wuxia would also go with them. There were some medicinal herbs on the mountain that could be found during the winter. There was a shortage of medicinal herbs in the garrison, especially during the winter. Some of the soldiers caught a cold, and it was difficult for them to recover in a short time. Shen Wuxia ordered someone to boil some medicinal concoction to expel the cold. She filled a wooden bucket with the concoction and gave everyone a bowl. After drinking the concoction, it would be hot and sweaty. It was very good for the body. She didn't look as sturdy as Hien. She was gentle and weak. It was very rare for her to be able to go up the mountain with the new recruits on such a cold day. Who's the recruit behind her? Shirtu asked with a frown. Everyone looked over and saw that the recruit behind Shen Wuxia had a person lying on his back. This person wasn't wearing a uniform, so it was obvious that he wasn't a recruit from the Liang Province Guards. They hadn't said anything yet, but curious recruits had already rushed over to find out what was going on. Not long after, some of the recruits who heard the news came back and told their companions what was going on. Hien listened carefully and heard someone say, That person is a hunter from the other side of the mountain. His family is so poor that they don't have enough food to eat, so he took the risk to come up the mountain to hunt. In the end, he was trapped by the snow. When Miss Shen and the others met this person, half of his body was buried in the snow. We had to dig him out of the snow and come back half alive. Then he's really lucky. Mount Baiyue is unusually cold. If he had stayed for a few more minutes, even the gods wouldn't have been able to save him. Isn't that so? Xiaomai muttered. Going up the mountain in this weather, he really doesn't want to live. There's nothing we can do about it. The lives of poor people aren't fortune tellers. His family doesn't even have money to eat, so how can he care about other things? Hong Shan sighed. After watching for a while, the crowd dispersed. However, this matter was not over. At night, Cheng Lisu came back and said that she wanted to stay in Xiao Ju's room. Hien asked curiously, Didn't you refuse to move back? Cheng Lisu frowned and said, Today the person that Dr. Shen saved is staying in our room, so I was kicked out. I can't let him stay in Uncle's room. When Uncle comes back, he'll beat me to death. Forget it, I'll reluctantly stay here for a few days. After he leaves, I'll move back. Brother He, can you accompany me back to get the boxes tomorrow? I can't move them alone. Of course, but I'm afraid that you won't be staying here for a few days. It'll be a long time. Hien shook his head. Why? Hien smiled and didn't answer. However, Cheng Lisu soon knew why Hien said that. The next day, after the day training, Hien accompanied Cheng Lisu back to get the boxes in the shared room. They just so happened to run into Shen Wuxia, who was applying medicine to the hunter they saved yesterday. Hien looked at her hands. Other than some medicine to replenish energy and medicine for frostbite, there was also some medicine for external injuries. Hien asked, Miss Shen, is that person injured? There are wild beasts in the forest. He encountered a bear and was attacked by it. When he was trying to avoid it, he fell off the cliff and was buried in the snow. There are some external injuries. Cheng Lisu asked, Then his injuries are very serious? Will he have to stay in the Liang province guard for a long time? It'll be a long time before I can move back. Young Master Chung, Wuxia said helplessly. Even if his injuries are healed, he can't leave the Liang province guard for now. He came from the other side of the mountain. Right now, Baiyu Mountain is sealed off by the snow. I'm afraid that he will have to wait for the snow to melt or for sunny days before he can go up. If we let him go back now, he will only freeze to death on the mountain again. When Chung Lisu heard this, she almost jumped up. Then won't we have to wait an entire winter? When second young master comes back, perhaps there will be another way. Wuxia comforted her. Yan noticed that when Wuxia said Xiaoju, he didn't call him commander-in-chief but second young master. It wasn't a master-servant relationship. Instead, it seemed like they were very familiar with each other. While he was thinking, they arrived in front of the room. There was no one else in the room at the moment. After training in the practice field, everyone had gone to eat and rest. Yan used to lie on the edge of the wall, but now there was another person lying down. He wore a thin shirt and wrapped the blanket tightly around him. He seemed to be very cold. Wuxia placed the medicine tray on the table and turned around to call him. Hu Yuanzhong? When the person lying on the bed heard this, the blanket moved slightly. After a moment, he supported himself on the bed with both hands and slowly sat up. He was a man about 30 years old. His skin was dark, and his lips were cracked to the point that they were peeling. He looked a little thin and weak. He lifted the blanket and looked at Wuxia. He said hurriedly, "Dr. Shen, you should change your dressing." Wuxia said, "Sit by the bed and roll up your trousers." The man called Hu Yuanzhong looked even more nervous. He rubbed his hands and stammered, "How can I trouble a female doctor? I'll do it myself." He bent down. As soon as he moved, he hissed in pain. When Wuxia saw this, he squatted down in front of Hu Yuanzhong and helped him roll up his trousers. Sure enough, there were scars all over his legs. They were probably caused by the rocks and branches on the mountain. "It's not done yet," Wuxia said. "I'll apply more medicine today." Hu Yuanzhong nodded blankly. "Let me do it." At this moment, Yan's voice interrupted. Before Wuxia could react, she reached out and took the medicine from Wuxia's hands. She squatted down and said, "Miss Shen, please get up first." This. Hu Yuanzhong was a little surprised. "This little brother. My name is Yan. The bed you're sleeping on now is mine. Miss Shen is a girl after all. It's not convenient for you. I'll apply medicine for brother Hu. It shouldn't be a problem, right?" Yan smiled and looked at Hu Yuanzhong. Hu Yuanzhong sighed in relief. Of course, I don't want to trouble Dr. Shen." Yan stopped fooling around. Wuxia frowned slightly. "There's no difference between men and women in front of doctors. You don't know how to apply medicine. I know how to apply medicine. Dr. Shen, don't be nervous. You should take a look at Chung Lisu first. I saw that he was coughing this morning. I don't want him to catch a cold." Chung Lisu said, "That's right, Dr. Shen. I feel that my throat is a little dry." Wuxia was stunned. He said, "Really?" Then he stood up and said to Chung Lisu, "Come outside with me. I'll take a look at him first." The two of them left. Only Hu Yuanzhong and Yan were left in the room. Yan first helped him clean up the blood that had seeped out from his leg, then applied a thin layer of medicine on his wound. He asked, "Big brother Hu, your injury is a bit serious. Does it hurt a lot?" "It's okay," Hu Yuanzhong said. "It's just some external injuries." Although he said that, he said it through gritted teeth. It looked like it was very difficult for him to speak. Yan stopped what he was doing and used a little more force. Hu Yuanzhong cried out in pain. "Ah! I'm sorry, brother Hu." Yan was embarrassed. "I wasn't careful. It's okay. Dr. Shen is still the most attentive. I'm a big man and clumsy. I've hurt brother Hu. Brother Hu, please don't mind." Hu Yuanzhong forced a smile and said, "Don't say that." Yan smiled and lowered his head to continue applying medicine. He snorted coldly in his heart. Just now, she saw clearly that although Hu Yuanzhong refused to apply the medicine himself, he cried out in pain as soon as he moved. When Wuxia squatted down, Hu Yuanzhong's eyes flashed with a hint of joy. Although he hid it very well, Hien still saw it. She hated this kind of person who was lustful. Shin Wuxia saved Hu Yuanzhong's life. Hu Yuanzhong had dirty thoughts about his savior. What kind of person was this? When he pulled up Hu Yuanzhong's trousers, Hien could clearly see these so-called serious injuries. They looked messy and serious, but in fact, they were all external injuries. Hien, a girl, could not make a sound when she suffered more serious injuries. If this person was so poor that he risked his life to go up the mountain to hunt, he would not be so delicate. When a person was so hungry that they could not afford to eat, how would they have the mind to rack their brains for dirty thoughts? With just a few words, one could see Hu Yuanzhong's character. Shin Wuxia was kind and pure. He was also a doctor who treated patients, so he did not care about these tricks. Hien, on the other hand, saw everything clearly as a bystander. He only felt uncomfortable in his heart. Big brother Hu, what are your plans after you recover? Hien asked. Hu Yuanzhong scratched his head. I haven't thought about it yet. Why don't you stay in the Liangzhou guards? Soldiers have enough to eat. You won't starve, Hien joked. That's good too, Hu Yuanzhong said with a silly smile. He actually said that was good too? This time Hien was even more surprised. She was just casually teasing him, but Hu Yuanzhong actually agreed. He didn't even say anything like, this is too embarrassing. It could be seen that, firstly, he didn't feel grateful. Secondly, he never thought about his future plans. A person who did not know what the future held should always be worrying about what to do in the future. How could he be so careless? Hien was instantly displeased. Could it be that Hu Yuanzhong wanted to rely on the Liangzhou guards to take advantage of Shin Wuxia all the time? Thinking of this, Hien quickly applied the medicine on Hu Yuanzhong's wound. She passed a bowl of medicine to him and said, Big brother Hu, drink the medicine first. Hu Yuanzhong reached out to take it. Thank you. He drank the medicine rather quickly. He straightened his neck and gulped down the medicine. Then he passed the bowl back to Hien. Hien reached out to take it. He saw that Hu Yuanzhong's outstretched hand was covered in red rashes from the web between his thumb and index finger to the inside of his wrist. Hien paused. Hu Yuanzhong noticed Hien's movements and asked, What's wrong with brother He? Big brother Hu, do you want a female doctor to take a look at the rashes on your hand? Hien asked, Did you get it on the mountain too? Hu Yuanzhong was stunned. He rubbed his wrist twice and smiled. No need. It should subside in a few days. It's not a serious illness. There's no need to trouble a female doctor. If that's the case, Hien nodded and smiled. Then it's nothing. She stared at Hu Yuanzhong and didn't say anything for a while. Hu Yuanzhong also felt strangely uncomfortable. He touched his face and asked, Brother He, is there something on my face? No. Hien smiled and shook his head. I'll take the empty bowl out first. Although Miss Shen is a doctor, she's still a girl. I have nothing to do these few days, so I'll run errands for Miss Shen. I'll take care of big brother Hu's wound medicine. He pretended not to see the disappointment in Hu Yuanzhong's eyes and turned to leave. When he left, Shen Wuxia was telling Cheng Lisu to stick out her tongue. Seeing Hien come out, he asked suspiciously, So fast? There weren't many wounds to begin with. Hien asked, How's Cheng Lisu? I ate too much spicy food these few days. My throat is smoking. Cheng Lisu was embarrassed. It's nothing serious. Then it's fine. You can go back. Hien returned the medicine tray to Shin Wuxia and said to Shin Wuxia, I've already discussed it with Big Brother Hu. I'll take care of Big Brother Hu's wound medicine these few days. From tomorrow onwards, I'll come to Miss Shen's room every day at this time to take the medicine and send it to Big Brother Hu. Miss Shen won't have to make another trip. Shin Wuxia was still a little hesitant. Then it's settled. Take it as my thanks for the box of scar removal and muscle revitalization ointment that Miss Shen gave me. Hien put his arm around Cheng Lisu's shoulder. Then we'll go first. He and Cheng Lisu walked away. On the way, Cheng Lisu asked him, Big brother He, what's wrong? What? Hien came back to his senses. After you came out of Hu Yuanzhong's room, you stopped talking. What happened in the room just now? Did you two have a fight? No. Hien took 2 steps and thought for a while. He stopped and said to Cheng Lisu, You go back first. I have something to talk to Hong Shan about. But you haven't eaten anything yet. I'll go get 2 steamed buns. He Yin waved his hand. You go back first and wait for me. See you later. Hong Shan and Xiao Mai were eating porridge. When they saw He Yin, they made room for him and said, Why are you so late today? I thought you weren't coming. I had something to do on the way here. He Yin took a steamed bun, but he didn't wolf it down like he usually did. He only took a bite and stopped. After a long time he said, Brother Shan, sure too. I have something that I need your help with. Why are you so serious? Hong Shan put down the bowl in his hand. What do you need our help with? The hunter that Dr. Shen rescued from the mountains yesterday, Hu Yuanzhong. He's in your room now, right? He Yin said, For the next few days, you have to train during the day. Can you help me keep an eye on him at night? Hong Shan and Shi Tu looked at each other. Hong Shan asked, Why don't I understand what you're saying? What's wrong with Hu Yuanzhong? Why do you want to keep an eye on him? I think there's something wrong with him. This time, even Xiao Mai didn't have time to eat. The atmosphere was solemn for a moment. Shi Tu asked in a low voice, What's wrong? Maybe I'm thinking too much. I'm not sure yet. But I think that maybe it's not a coincidence that he was rescued from the mountains by Dr. Shen. Upon hearing this, Hong Shan's eyes widened. A spy? Keep your voice down, He Yin said. I'm just suspicious. That's why I need you to keep an eye on him. See if he does anything unusual at night. No. Hong Shan still felt incredulous. You have to tell us what's wrong with him that made you suspect him. He Yin took a deep breath and said, I'll tell you in a few days. For now, I just need your help to keep an eye on him. I hope I'm thinking too much, she said softly. At night, after parting ways with Hong Shan and the others, He Yin returned to her room. After familiarizing herself with the place, she lay on the bed. She was full of worries and couldn't fall asleep. Meeting Hu Yuanzhong today was an accident. Who knew that in the end, it would upset her and make her feel uneasy. He Yin didn't make up what she said to Hong Shan and the others. She did suspect that Hu Yuanzhong was a spy who had infiltrated the Liangzhou guards for other purposes. As for how she found this suspicious point, it was because when she handed the medicine to Hu Yuanzhong today, when Hu Yuanzhong returned it, she saw a dense red rash that covered the area between his thumb and index finger to the inside of his wrist. It made her think of the Chang people. The place where the Chang people lived was covered in dense forests. The weather was humid all year round. When the Chang soldiers held swords, it was easy for them to get red rashes from the area between their thumb and forefinger to the wrist. When He Yin was General Fei Hong, he had specially looked for military doctors to study the rashes. Even though the Chang people later entered the Central Plains, the rashes didn't disappear in a short period of time. Therefore, when she saw the rash between Hu Yuanzhong's thumb and forefinger, she immediately thought of the Chang soldiers without hesitation. However, she wasn't completely sure. All the rashes in the world looked the same. It could be caused by the humid weather, or it could be caused by touching sensitive objects. There was no need to suspect the other party because of a rash. However, it was probably because He Yin had developed a habit of being cautious when he was a general, especially when it came to the Chang people. Or maybe it was because He Yin had sensed Hu Yuanzhong's hidden feelings for Shen Muxue, and had a bad impression of him. Now she immediately suspected him. Thinking about it carefully, there were indeed many suspicious points. For example, the snow on the mountain was so heavy. The other side of Mount Baiwe was shady, so the snow would only be deeper. The new recruits couldn't even cross this side. How did Hu Yuanzhong cross the other side alone? Since he said that his family was so poor that they didn't have any food to eat, why didn't he find a gentler way to do it? For example, he could help people move goods at the docks and do some manual labor. At least, he could temporarily resist the cold and hunger. One had to know that when hunting on Mount Baiwe, the best-case scenario was that he could hunt a wild beast to alleviate his urgent needs. However, there was a higher possibility that he would die on the mountain and lose both his wealth and life, leaving behind an easier path to take, and instead taking a seemingly inconceivably difficult path. This was not facing difficulties head-on, this was stupidity. Looking at how he pretended to cry out in pain to get Shen Muxue to personally take care of him, he didn't seem like a stupid person. The more Hien thought about it, the more suspicious she felt. Unfortunately, Xiaoju wasn't here, so she couldn't remind Xiaoju. But even if Xiaoju was here, she couldn't directly mention the most important point. The Chang tribe was thousands of li away from the capital. The new recruits of the Liangzhou guards couldn't have seen the Chang tribe soldiers. Even Xiaoju might not have fought with the Chang tribe. Hien was born in the capital, so how could she know the secret habits of the Chang tribe? She was afraid that if she said it, the first person to be suspected would not be Hu Yuanzhong, but herself. That year, she led the soldiers to quell the rebellion of Xichang. The commander of the Chang tribe, Ridamuji, died on the battlefield, and the rest of the Chang tribe surrendered. The next few years were peaceful. The Chang tribe was very peaceful, and there were no disturbances. But that didn't mean she could truly relax. If this really was a Chang person, an ordinary unarmed and defenseless commoner, how could he have just so happened to ascend White Moon Mountain on this type of snowy day? Moreover, he was even picked up by Shenmuxue and entered the Liang province guards. If there were too many coincidences, then they wouldn't be coincidences anymore. Someone must have done it on purpose. Now that Xiaoju wasn't here, if there really was a conspiracy, how could she deal with it? Xiaoju wasn't here. Xiaoju wasn't here? In an instant, Hien sat up, and a terrifying thought flashed through her mind. Why did this person come when Xiaoju wasn't here? Could it be that the call for help from Zhangtai was also fake? Attack in the east, attack in the west. She had to memorize this rule in military books every day. How could she forget? At some point the snow stopped. Hien looked out the window. The wind outside was calm, and the snow covered the ground. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. But under this calm, there might be a shocking undercurrent, waiting for the right time to flood the heavens. Chapter 108. With so many things hidden in her heart, she couldn't sleep well at night. The next day, Hien woke up before the sun rose. After the morning training, she went to talk to Hongshan. Hongshan said, "Yesterday, Shirtu and I took turns guarding him for half the night, but we didn't find anything wrong." Hien looked at Shirtu, and Shirtu nodded at her. "Nothing happened the whole night." "No, he slept more deeply than we did." Hongshan looked at Hien suspiciously. "You're thinking too much. Hu Yuanzhong is just an ordinary hunter. I don't think there's anything wrong with what he said. His family is so poor, it's quite pitiful. Ehigu, what's wrong with him? Why are you so suspicious of him?" Xiaomai asked curiously. "What's wrong?" "In the end, it's just a rash between the thumb and index finger and wrist. It's not a big problem. It's just that he picked the time when Xiaoju went out, which made her feel that something was wrong. She had been on the edge of life and death on the battlefield too many times. Sometimes the body can make more direct judgments than the brain." One of the old generals she followed often said, "Ordinary people's intuition may be wrong, but people like us, when it comes to danger, most of the time it's true." She pondered for a moment and said, "Let me take a look." Hongshan shrugged, and didn't ask any more questions. In the evening, all the day training was over. Hien went to Shenmushue's room to get some medicine, and then went to find Hu Yuanzhong. Hu Yuanzhong was alone in the room, looking down at a piece of paper. When Hien pushed the door open, he immediately hid the paper in his arms. "Brother Hu, what are you doing in the room alone?" Hien pretended not to see his actions and asked with a smile. "Nothing," Hu Yuanzhong sighed. "My leg hasn't recovered, so I can't get out of bed. I can only stay in the room. Sorry for the trouble." "It's no trouble at all," Hien said with a smile. "You're so badly injured, of course you need to recuperate." She helped Hu Yuanzhong roll up his trousers and squatted down to apply medicine. Yesterday, she didn't look carefully. Today, since she came with doubts, she looked very carefully. Both of the hunter's legs were covered with scars. The biggest one was probably caused by Shirtu. It was so deep that the bones could be seen. It was also the most serious one. "I heard from Miss Shen that big brother who encountered a bear when he went up the mountain." Hien casually asked, "Are there still bears in this season?" The bears of the White Moon Mountain were probably hibernating during the day. It was not easy for Hu Yuanzhong to bump into one. "Yeah." Hu Yuanzhong scratched his head. "I was unlucky. I didn't find the fox but met the bear first." He shook his head. How can you say that he's unlucky? Not everyone can escape unscathed after encountering a bear. I heard that bears don't have good eyesight, but they are very sensitive to smells. Big Brother who was injured and covered in blood, but the bear didn't chase after you. Big Brother who is already very strong. Also, Hien didn't look at Hu Yuanzhong's expression. His hands didn't stop moving as he continued. Big Brother who was buried in the snow. It was also very coincidental that Miss Shen rescued him. Our Liang Province Guard recruits only go up the mountain once every 3 to 5 days. If Big Brother who had gone up the mountain one day later, or if he had fallen in the wrong place, I'm afraid he wouldn't be in the Liang Province Guard right now. Hu Yuanzhong was stunned. He nodded and said, That's true. This is all thanks to Miss Shen. Hien smiled slightly. After applying the medicine, he helped Hu Yuanzhong pull down his trousers and handed over the bowl of medicine. When Hu Yuanzhong took the bowl of medicine, Hien's gaze fell on his wrist. He had pulled his sleeves a little longer, but he could still faintly see a patch of red between his thumb and index finger. How long has Big Brother who been a hunter? Hu Yuanzhong drank the medicine as he said, 7 or 8 years. Have you always hunted on White Moon Mountain? She asked very quickly. Hu Yuanzhong hesitated for a moment before saying, Yes. Then in the past few years, have you ever gone up White Moon Mountain on snowy days like this? No, never. Why did you go up again this year? It's really because I didn't have enough food to fill my stomach. Hu Yuanzhong drank the last mouthful of medicine and looked strangely at Hien. Brother He, why are you asking this? Hien lowered his head and smiled. I'm just a bit curious. She reached out to take the empty bowl in Hu Yuanzhong's hand. Hu Yuanzhong reached out his hand. When Hien's hand reached out to Hu Yuanzhong, it suddenly changed direction and chopped directly at Hu Yuanzhong's face. Hu Yuanzhong couldn't dodge in time and could only retreat to the side in panic. Hien's hand struck his chest. The latter screamed and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, the young man didn't stop at all. He directly reached into Hu Yuanzhong's lapel and took out a piece of paper. Give it back to me, Hu Yuanzhong shouted. However, because of Hien's slap just now, his voice was hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. Half of his body was lying on the couch, and he reached out to Hien in vain. The movement was so loud that it alarmed the people around. The surrounding recruits heard the noise and ran in. As soon as they came in, they saw Hu Yuanzhong clutching his chest and spitting out blood. Hien stood beside the couch with a piece of paper in his hand. What happened? What happened? Hu Yuanzhong said with difficulty, He took my things. What did you take from him? The recruit asked. Hien lowered his head and looked at the yellow paper in his hand. There was a poem written on the yellow paper. My heart is like the water of the West River, day and night flowing east without rest. The handwriting was beautiful. At first glance, it was obvious that it was written by a woman. What is this? Hien frowned and asked him. Hu Yuanzhong stared at him. He was furious and didn't say anything. What happened? Shen Mushua's voice came from behind. She happened to be nearby. She heard the noise and came over. What she saw was such a hostile scene. Hien. She looked at Hien suspiciously, and then looked at Hu Yuanzhong who was clutching his chest. She walked to Hu Yuanzhong's side and asked in surprise, Why is your injury worse? Then she saw the blood on Hu Yuanzhong's lips. Who did this? Hu Yuanzhong stared at Hien. Shen Mushua frowned. Hien, what did you do? I just gave him a light slap. Hien smiled. I probably didn't control my strength well. Nonsense. He is still injured. How can he take your slap? Hu Yuanzhong struggled to get up and reached out a hand to Hien. His tone was still angry. Give it back to me. Hien shrugged his shoulders and returned the paper with the love poem to him. What is this? A recruit asked. What did you take from him? Shen Mushua also looked over. Hu Yuanzhong said sadly. This was written by my deceased wife. It was actually a relic of his deceased wife. Hien, why did you take someone else's relic? A recruit couldn't stand it. No wonder he is so angry. I didn't know it was a relic. I was just playing with Brother Hu. Hien said shamefully. Brother Hu won't be angry with me, right? Hu Yuanzhong looked at Hien. He seemed to be angry but couldn't vent it. In the end he had to endure it and said, "It's okay. Don't do this kind of thing in the future." After that he coughed violently again. He was extremely weak. Shen Wuxia saw this scene and his expression didn't look good. He only said to Hien, "Forget it. Hien, there is nothing for you to do here. You can leave first. I will still be responsible for Hu Yuanzhong's medicine. In the future, you don't have to come here every day." It was as if Hien was the god of plague. Okay. Hien wasn't angry and answered with a smile. He glanced at Hu Yuanzhong and turned to leave. As soon as he stepped out of the room, the smile on his face disappeared. Just now she did it on purpose. When people are in danger, they will instinctively react. Just like when Ding Yi tested her in Liangzhou City to see if she was really blind. If Hu Yuanzhong wasn't as badly injured as he appeared to be, he would naturally counterattack. But he didn't and took Hien's palm. If it was just that, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when Hien launched that palm, he also deliberately took note of it. The palm that she gave Hu Yuanzhong looked fierce on the surface, but in reality, she didn't use much strength. At most, Hu Yuanzhong's flesh would hurt, but he definitely wouldn't bleed. After all, Hien didn't want to kill anyone. If everything was just her thinking too much, wouldn't Hu Yuanzhong have suffered for nothing? Here was the problem. Hien was very confident in her control of strength. How could such a harmless palm make Hu Yuanzhong vomit blood? If she didn't misjudge her strength, then this person was lying. Hien thought that Hu Yuanzhong was lying. As for the love poem on the paper in his arms, it was even stranger. A person who carried his deceased wife's belongings with him was naturally a person with deep feelings. A person with deep feelings, when facing a beautiful female doctor, shouldn't have other thoughts. Hien looked at all of this as if she was watching a lame play. Unfortunately, even if she was full of doubts, she couldn't tell anyone about this. She was afraid that if she told others that the palm just now was a fake, they would think that she was avoiding responsibility and deliberately said it lightly. This was indeed a bit troublesome. She walked and walked. Before long, Xiao Mai and the others followed her. When they saw her, they first let out a sigh of relief and said in a small voice, "Ehige, they said you beat Hu Yuanzhong. Is it true?" It had only been the time for a stick of incense to burn. How did the entire Liang province know? "It's true." "You're still suspicious of him?" Hong Shan frowned and said, "If you suspect that there's something wrong with him, we'll help you keep an eye on him. Why beat him up? Do you know that right now, the entire Liang province guard is saying that you. He wanted to say something, but stopped. Hien asked, "What are they saying about me?" "They're saying that Ehige is using your strength to bully the weak, arrogant and despotic," Xiao Mai said. Hien was silent. Things had become even stranger. "Ehige, what do we do now?" Xiao Mai looked at him worriedly. "Do you want to explain to the others?" "There's no need," Hien said, narrowing his eyes. Since this person had spread the rumor so quickly, he must have come for her. Explaining would be futile. Compared to explaining these meaningless rumors, she was more suspicious of Hu Yuanzhong's goal, and how she could expose this person's flaws. "You guys continue to keep an eye on him at night," Hien said. "I'll keep watching." Xiao Mai and Hong Shan looked at each other, not saying anything else. Several days passed in a row. Everything was calm and peaceful. Nothing happened in the Liang province guard. Xiao Mai helped Hien keep an eye on Hu Yuanzhong every day, but she didn't find any flaws. On the other hand, Hong Shan and the others didn't sleep well at night. During training the next day, they were absent-minded with dark circles under their eyes, and were scolded by Liang Ping several times. As for Hien, he wanted to personally see how Hu Yuanzhong was doing every day, and see if he could get more information. However, Shen Wuxia guarded against him like he was guarding against a thief. He strictly forbade Hien from getting close to Hu Yuanzhong, fearing that Hien would accidentally injure Hu Yuanzhong again while fooling around. Thus, after a few days, Hien couldn't even touch Hu Yuanzhong's side, much less find any flaws. That night, Hien walked to the training field alone. Because of his injury, Hien changed his night training to once every 3 days. Xiaoju had been gone for more than half a month, but there was no news at all. Hien secretly asked Cheng Lisu if there was any news from Zhangtai, but Cheng Lisu didn't know either. Originally, when Xiaoju was here, he didn't think much of it. Now that he was gone, he felt that the Liang province guard couldn't do without him. Otherwise, if he revealed a little bit of this matter to Xiaoju, with his mind he would definitely be able to figure out what was going on. Now that she didn't even have someone to discuss this with, it was really difficult. She walked over to the crossbow, and was about to practice when she heard movement from the other end of the horse path. She looked up and saw a black shadow riding a horse toward Mount Baiyue. It was the middle of the night. How could there be someone going up the mountain? However, the weather had been good these past few days, and the snow on the mountain had melted a little, so it was easier to travel than in the past few days. Hien wanted to call for help, but the training field was too far away from the shared bunks where the new recruits lived. If he called for help, he wouldn't be able to catch up to this person. Seeing that person running farther and farther away and about to disappear into the darkness of the mountain forest, Hien didn't care about anything else. He pulled out a horse from the stable, jumped onto it, and chased after the person. In the winter on Mount Baiyue, the soil was bitingly cold, especially since the snow had melted. It was very easy for the horse to slip on the ground. The person in front of him didn't light a match and just moved forward under the starlight in the forest. Hien also couldn't see clearly, so he followed and couldn't overtake the person. Hien also knew the terrain of Mount Baiyue very well, so he looked for small paths to take. He wanted to lead Hien into a ditch several times. However, Hien had been here for many years, so he remembered the path much better than other people. Previously, he had been here once to fight for the flag, and then twice to chop firewood. He had already memorized the dangerous places, so he didn't fall for it. After a few times, that person realized that Hien didn't fall for the bait, so he turned his horse around and went in a different direction. Hien chased after him very closely. She suspected that this person was Hu Yuanzhong, but why did Hu Yuanzhong go up the mountain in the middle of the night? He couldn't have taken advantage of the dead of night when there was no one around to cross the mountain ridge and go home. One thing, if one could see too little, it would be difficult to deduce the whole picture. Since she couldn't deduce the whole picture, she didn't need to waste time. She just needed to find the source and ask clearly. She had to catch this person today. Hien didn't take the small paths, so the road was much wider. Hien urged his horse to catch up, and the distance between them was getting closer and closer. When there were only a few dozen feet between them, he jumped up and threw half of his body at the other person's horse. That person couldn't dodge in time, and was forced to stop his horse, wanting to escape. Hien pounced and fought with him. She had come and left in a hurry, so there was only an iron cudgel left on the weapon rack. Hien casually took it, treating it as better than fighting with his bare hands. At this moment, that person jumped up. Hien finally saw clearly that this person's face was covered, and his entire body was wrapped up tightly, only revealing a pair of eyes. His figure was similar to Hu Yuanzhong's, but the light was dim, so it was difficult to distinguish his identity from his eyes. He stood still, holding a large saber in his hand. The blade of the saber was like a crescent moon, flashing a biting cold light in the night. A scimitar? Hien's heart beat wildly. The Chang soldiers loved to use scimitars because it was convenient to cut meat. Not only could it kill people, but it could also eat meat. Hien had experienced the power of the scimitar before. She had seen a comrade hit by this scimitar, and his head fell to the ground before blood even flowed out. During the years when the Western Chang invaded the Central Plains, Commander Ridamuji's favorite thing to do was to use the scimitar to cut off the captives' heads, string them together, and tie them to the tail of his beloved horse. Wherever he went, people were terrified. Now that she saw this scimitar, Hien knew that this person was from the Chang tribe. She frowned. "Are you really from the Chang tribe?" Hearing this, that person laughed strangely, and his voice was hoarse. "How did you know?" "Cut the crap." Hien placed the iron cudgel on the ground and stared at him coldly. "Tell me, why did you sneak into the Liang province guards?" "Shoo." That person put his index finger to his lips and said, "Be quiet, so that we won't be discovered." He saw that Hien didn't say anything and seemed to be interested. He said again, "If you defeat me, I'll tell you." "Insolent." Hien reprimanded. As soon as she finished speaking, she pounced on that person. Although the iron cudgel was not as sharp as the scimitar, it was superior in its simplicity and toughness, making it difficult for people to get close to her. He Yan was injured earlier, and her wounds were not fully healed, so her movements were restricted. Even so, she was evenly matched with this person. The masked person used the scimitar extremely well, so skillful that it was shocking. His attacks were also very ruthless, and every move was aimed at He Yan's heart. He Yan was forced to retreat step by step. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. Because she stopped in a hurry, the snow around her feet was kicked up. She looked back and saw that behind her was an abyss. "You've been discovered?" That person laughed. "Why didn't you fall for it?" "Because your technique is too lame," He Yan said coldly. Then, she slammed the iron cudgel on the ground and jumped forward with the help of the cudgel, landing behind the masked person. Her hands did not stop moving, and she fiercely chopped down on the masked person's head. But the cudgel missed. The masked person dodged sideways, and the iron cudgel hit his shoulder. Even so, it was enough. He Yan practiced stone weights every day, and her strength was no longer as weak as when she first entered the Liang province guards. Even a man with a physique like Huang Xiong's would suffer, let alone this person. He Yan's attack made the masked person groan in pain. He almost lost his grip on the scimitar in his hand. Even so, his right hand lost its strength, and he could not wield the scimitar for the time being. "How is it?" He Yan sneered. The masked person did not speak. He turned around and ran forward, intending to escape. He Yan frowned and followed closely. Her endurance and physical strength were amazing, and she ran fast enough. For a moment, the masked person could not get rid of He Yan. As long as he caught up with this person and took off his mask, he would be able to find out his identity. Both the witness and the material evidence were gathered. If it was really Hu Yuanzhong, Shen Han should be able to interrogate him and find out what they were planning to do in the middle of the night. Just as he was thinking, he suddenly saw the person in front of him stop. He shouted at He Yan, "I have a gift for you." The scimitar was thrown at He Yan's heart. He Yan subconsciously caught it and held the hilt. Then he saw another person roll out of the forest. Under the night sky, the person who rolled out was actually wearing the red warrior robes of the Liang province guards. The mountain path was a long slope. The new recruit rolled all the way down, and if he went any further down, he would be in a bottomless abyss. He Yan watched the masked person laugh mischievously and escape into the depths of the forest. He gritted his teeth and turned around to chase after the new recruit who was rolling down. The new recruit in the warrior robes rolled faster and faster. He didn't even make a sound. He Yan's heart sank. He flew up and landed in the middle of the long slope. He caught the new recruit in his arms and the two of them rolled to the side. After a while they finally stopped in front of a tree. The body in his arms was still warm, but he didn't make a sound. He Yan lowered her head to look. Under the starlight, a young face was revealed. She was stunned for a moment. There were tens of thousands of new recruits in the Liang province guards. She couldn't remember the names of every single one of them. At most, she could recall those who looked familiar. She remembered this person's face. It was the cowardly ghost king Xiaohan. She met on the way down from the battle for the flag on Mount Baiyue. A few days ago, the young man who thanked her with a red face. Now his face was completely pale. His eyes were wide open, as if he was filled with terror before he died. His clothes were red. Nothing could be seen, but they were wet and stuck to his body. He Yan lowered her head to look at her hands. They were covered in blood. She unbuttoned the young man's clothes with trembling hands. There was a huge bloody hole in his chest. Some of his flesh had been hooked away, making it look hollow. He had died under a machete. No matter how many deaths she had seen, He Yan couldn't remain calm every time she faced the death of someone close to her. She closed her eyes. A wave of anger rose in her heart. She muttered in a low voice, "Bastard." He was still so young. He hadn't even been on the battlefield. Yet he had died in the desolate night of Mount Baiyue. If He Yan hadn't followed the masked man up the mountain tonight, he would have died without a sound. The next day, his brothers in the guard station would have discovered that one of them was missing. Missing one of them? Why did they drag this young man up the mountain and kill him? Was he killed because he saw something, or was there another reason? No. He Yan tightened her grip on the young man. She had fallen into a trap. Just as she thought of this, she heard rustling sounds in front of her. Someone was shouting. "Did you see anyone? Where is he?" Suddenly, the bushes in front of her were brushed aside. A recruit's face appeared. He was holding a torch in his hand. He happened to meet He Yan's eyes. He didn't need to think to know how ferocious the scene was. She was holding a machete in her hand. The machete was still stained with blood. Her hands were also stained with blood. In her hands, a recruit from Liangzhou was lying on his back. He died with his eyes open. There was a bloody hole in his chest. It was a shocking sight. I found him," the recruit shouted in panic. He scrambled backward. "Murder! He Yan killed someone." People quickly arrived. He Yan raised her head and saw dozens of people, including Shen Han, Liang Ping, and the other instructors. They stared at He Yan in surprise. Du Mao shouted, "He Yan, you killed someone?" The weapon was in her hands, and the body was at her feet. She went up the mountain in the middle of the night and acted suspiciously. No matter how they looked at it, she looked like a spy with ulterior motives. This was the real gift from the masked man.